What's up, everybody? Just want to take a quick second and let people know that I am self-supported. I now put all of my episodes on Substack for paid subscribers. I put them up early, and then 24 hours later, I release them to the public on all my platforms. I also have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, Zelle, a P.O. Box, and Locals, Patreon. And all of these, all of the links are in the show notes of every single episode I put out. So look forward to continuing to, provide great conversations. And thank you all for your continued support. Supposed to be a dynamic duo conversation with you and Ed Dowd, but we have to reschedule for next week. So I'm like, what the hell? Let's do a solo episode. Yeah,
Eddie's on injured reserve.
Yeah.
Sorry for the staging and the backdrop. My house is occupied with noisemakers and the rest, so I'm stuck in a bedroom, and this is all you get. I also have something I want to show you. You guys know I'm a Boston Terrier fan. Someone bought these guys at a rummage sale. They're pajama bottoms with Boston Terriers on them. They're really special. I bring something weird every time, don't I?
I wasn't expecting that. That was not in the in the playbook.
That was not on your bingo card.
Card. So what's going on? What's the top of your mind right now with everything? This episode is brought to you by Vaulted, launched by McIlvaney Financial Group. The simplest and most affordable way to own physical gold and silver. Physical gold is the only asset outside of the control of the government and banking system. They can print dollars, but they can't print gold. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike.
I, believe it or not, have been spending more time than I thought I would digging down the darkest of the rabbit holes, like the trafficking rabbit holes and Erica Kirk and things like that. She's drawn a lot of attention again lately. I think my working hypothesis is getting more compelling, that she's an MK Ultra product, raised since childhood to do bad things, and she's got one of the things I've over the years that I've studied these without writing anything about it. The only thing anyone ever gets out of me is when I do podcasts on it. Is the MK Ultra victims have very sort of odd personalities. Often they're very flat, and I think it's a defense mechanism, because the way they brainwash you is they torture you in a way that would make a Korean POW commandant wince, and so they're highly damaged, schizophrenic, multi-personality, dissociative identity disorder problems, and you can be talking to one personality, not realizing there's 8 others in there that she doesn't even know about, that sort of thing. And she's got the flat personality, and she's got the weirdness. So I'd like to ask Elizabeth Nixon, which I'm tempted to do. I haven't yet, but tempted to ask her what her take on Erica is. But I'd comfortably bet a paycheck that she's an intelligence asset who was trained from very young age.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of some of that stuff. And specifically to her. But one thing I will say, just on a broad standpoint, she's just not likable. Like, I'm sorry. You put her, I saw that video with her the other day
with the Sarah Connor look.
Yeah, the black hat and it's like, I don't know if at this point, if they're force feeding it down people, because then you have all the influencers, because everything's so divided right now, right? Where you've got the MAGA influencers that are part of these organizations, which to me, some of these organizations, I don't want to say they're dying, but they're becoming dinosaurs, right? Daily Wire.
Well, TPUSA is dead meat.
I said that right after he was gone. I said they're irrelevant.
Yeah. No, without Charlie, they're dead meat. And then they've played it terribly. If they hope to retrieve it, they played their trump card and it was the wrong card.
I mean, unless they're planning on having Tucker at their AmFest every year, like last year, and that was the huge
but
draw.
then he'll just rip them.
But he sells tickets.
I know, but TPUSA needs more than that. TPUSA needs true believers. It's a cult.
But if they have the funding, though, I mean, depending where the funding's coming from.
It's coming from Israel, right?
If it's Peter Thiel or if it's whoever, well, I don't know.
Directly or indirectly, it's coming from AIPAC. It's coming from that sort of source.
Yeah. Elon Musk, I mean, he had said he was a donor to Charlie Kirk at the wake, but so they might still be around, but they're not. They were irrelevant the second that he was killed.
Yeah, but they also look incredibly corrupt. They've not been able to conceal what appears to be deep-seated corruption. And they haven't been convicted in a court of law, so it's always allegedly. But Candace Owens has been beating the tar out of them. And, they're trying to demonize her. And I listened to her very carefully. And I have found nothing about Candace that tells me that she can't be believed. That's not to say she's not occasionally wrong on something. But I believe she's trying to get it right. She's very smart. And she just tore that recent speech apart. She tears apart stuff. She tore apart Trump's tweet of her where she looked like a crack whore. Did you see that?
Yeah, but that was a photo she said she put out publicly a long time ago.
Yeah, she posted it.
What was that from?
She had a nearly fatal fungal infection that it was from some flood or something in her apartment building, and she got a fungal infection. She's on death's door. So after she recovered, she posted photos of how bad it was, and she said she was really sort of at the end of her rope. And then Trump used one of those photos to make her. I didn't think it was her. I looked at the photo. I said, "That's not Candace Owens. That's just a crack whore." But Candace said, "Yeah, that was the photo she posted near the bottom."
But you know what though about that is like, she got a lot of attention from him putting that photo up. A lot of clicks.
She does.
And
she does.
But doesn't it make you wonder? And and just a question that's popped in my head with all this. I'm like, who knows? Maybe all these guys are doing this. Like her and Laura Loomer.
That could be another level of kayfabe.
Well, her and Laura Loomer are going back and forth every night, right? It's an exchange, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And they're both getting probably. I mean, Candace Owens she might be, I would say, the number 2 female podcaster in the world right now.
Who, Laura or
no, Candace?
Or Candace.
Candace.
Yeah, Candace is number 1, I think.
Megyn Kelly's got to be right there.
So Megyn Kelly, the first kayfabe moment for Megyn, and I like Megyn, and she's very smart, and I like the fact that she's a trash mouth. She's a potty mouth. I like the fact, hot chick.
We got to come back to Candace Owens.
Okay. So we get to Candace Owens. I was supposed to have dinner with her and Charlie one night many years ago when I just thought they were grifters, but I said, "Oh, okay, I'll go to dinner with them." And then their seminar at Cornell got canceled, so I never got to go out to dinner with them. I wish I had been able to. In retrospect, at the time I was like, "Yeah, whatever." Now I'd really like to have had that dinner to size them up. I'm still trying to figure out who Charlie was, because I still think there's some evidence that Charlie was a fabricated figure too. Kind of Born Identity, where he pulled away from the storyline and went rogue, and therefore they took him down. And I've been listening to Candace, waiting to hear her say something about Charlie. There's 2 things I want to hear her talk about. One is Charlie's kids, which I don't think exist, and the other is that what she knows about Charlie's origin story, because it's very sketchy, it's very hazy. There's a famous, mysterious billionaire who took him under his wing out of high school. This just doesn't make sense, right? And he wasn't popular in high school, so he wasn't. So there's some part of the story that's not making sense. And then, of course, if I'm really right about the whole marriage being a fake, then Charlie had to have been in on it. And I was grilling Grok the other night on the evidence, these various clips of Candace of Erica not being able to remember the year that they were married. There was only 4 years, and I had to squeeze Grok hard. Grok wasn't going to give it up easy, so Grok has got the bias built into it. And when I pressured Grok, I finally got Grok to admit that it played out differently than its first response, because I have the tapes, I have the receipts, wherever that term comes from. And so Erica couldn't remember the year they were married. And she there was a videotape of her daughter from behind. You never see their faces.
So let me chime in here, because I used to see him at the grocery store, next
without family.
Well, I always saw him by himself, but I did ask some employees. I'm like, did anybody ever see kids or anything? Somebody did say they saw them.
Okay.
So take that for whatever that is, whatever it's worth.
It's a data point.
I live here, and I'm like, okay, the whole family had to have lived here. I wouldn't have known her if I saw her. I mean, blonde in Scottsdale. There's a million of them.
They're not rare.
Right.
Even the girls on the Cornell campus look pretty good right about now.
Right. Because I did ask, I was like, you ever see him? Was he always by himself? And they're like, no, I saw kids and wife and okay.
Okay, that's interesting. Doesn't shoot down my model, but it's something to follow up on. There are many people who are saying, where are the kids? So here she is traveling around doing her thing, and her kids, if you'd lost your father, your mother's number one and almost only job is to take care of your kids.
But I also think, though, too, not to half the people, or probably majority of the people that are in that scene, they're not taking care of their kids. I mean, look at the press secretary. She's got like a 2-year-old and about to have a baby maybe this week, and she's at the correspondence dinner Saturday night at 8:00.
Yeah, right. She undoubtedly has various nannies, right?
She's going on maternity leave and planning on coming back. Why would you be continuing to do that job through your whole pregnancy? That's a pressure cooker of a job.
Right. Yeah, you'd think you'd miscarry or something.
Well, wouldn't you be more focused on your infant? And I mean, I get it for the first 6 months or something, and then you land on Fox News, and it's usually what happens with those people. They get those high paying gigs after. I don't know. So I mean, I saw that on Saturday.
Her kid referred to Charlie as Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, I saw that. I've seen that video. We talked about this before.
Right. So I haven't been able to shake those. And then I just watch her, and she looks like a Stepford wife to me.
Well, she's just not likable. I mean, even just putting...
It's just not likable, though. She's not authentic looking at all.
No. But I mean, for regular people that are just watching this, she's not likable. They're not buying it. They're just not buying this.
Right. But they don't believe it. If she was an irritating person like Hillary... that's not likable, right? There are people who are not likable, but you sense you're seeing the person. I don't have any sense for seeing who Erica Kirk is. Those eyes that bug out, what the fuck are those? Whenever she says something, her eyes bug out of their head. I mean, people have turned that into memes and a half. I mean, she's a grade B actress failing to successfully act her way through these speeches.
The propaganda in today's world and the memes. I mean, it's did you know what's flooding my Twitter feed today? I'm going to shift here for a second.
No.
Is this JP Morgan? Did you see this thing going around?
I don't know what this JP Morgan thing is. Is it something to do with hiring Indian women or something?
No. Apparently, I don't even know if it's true, because now they're saying the whole thing is bullshit. But apparently, some executive at JP Morgan was made this guy. I don't know if it was Asian or Indian, but he made him a sex slave. She hired him, threatened his job. And he cheated on his wife. So there's all these memes flooding my feed on X.
You would think, wouldn't there? Yeah. Okay. That I've been catching some of them. I was sick this week, so I missed. You lay flat for a couple days. You really lose track of the world.
And then then you get back online for an hour, and you realize you didn't miss much, right?
Well, yes, except for the chatter's completely different. And then I'm still trying to figure out the economic consequences of the strait being closed down, all the way from, no biggie, as long as we get it opened back up, to we're already completely and royally fucked. And it's probably in between those two,
Yeah.
but
I go back to,
I think Matt goes with a pretty serious model, right? Matt Smith, I think, was pretty dark on that.
I'll tell you. We were exchanging messages, and I had him on. I had him and Craner on together last week, but we didn't.
Oh,
really,
that must have been.
It was good.
Fun.
It was really good. But we were talking. We didn't really get a chance to touch on that, and that's why I pinged him right before we came on to see if last minute if he wanted to jump in here. But because I want to go further into that discussion of what Matt and I talked about. But he had said to me, in end of February was basically like, well, first he asked me the question, what was 2020 about? That's what I want to ask these people that are saying that Trump is smashing the cabal, taking on the elite, taking on the globalists. What was 2020 about? He asked me that question. I'll ask you that question. What was it about?
I view that as the globalist cabal winning.
But just right. But what was the intention? What was the goal of it?
Well, so I come down in two directions, and I don't know which one to pick. One is they either fucked up and they wanted to test the mRNA vaccine and in a big way, and that they thought they could get away with it, and it turns out that they didn't, and we've caught on, and now they've destroyed their reputation. The other is not giving a damn about destroying your reputation, but rather, can you destroy the psyche of a global population? And if that was their goal, then they hit it out of the park. And then the question was, were they trying to see if they could get us to all lockstep into absurdity and do what we're told and things like that? Is that that's sort of the globalist model? Or is it just farming the guys who, scientists, one of the problems scientists have is if they come up with cool tech, they cannot resist trying to do it. And I've seen it happen to, like cold fusion, for example. I remember when that broke. I actually had a symposium on it. I organized a symposium, and I invited the guy who is the sort of the archivist of the cold fusion story to talk. And cold fusion, they before the paper was published, like 150 labs had tried to reproduce it and failed. And that's what science does well. But should you be trying to do fusion in a generic chemistry lab in the middle of some city like Pasadena or whatever? The answer is no. That should be in some high risk DOD lab. If you really thought you were generating fusion with palladium electrodes, you should be very nervous about that experiment. But they all just couldn't resist. They all did it. And it was completely irresponsible of the scientific community to jump on that way. So I think when you get this mRNA technology, you really do want it. You say, oh, we got to try this, right? This is so cool. It would be really great. And so it could be that simple. And then others jumped in. Like, there's a lot of players. This is a self-assembling oligarchy, as I was once told by an NSA, a guy who works for the NSA. He says everyone's interests align. So Jeff Bezos wanted everything to shut down because he then could sell Amazon goods. He knocked 2 million mom and pop companies out, businesses out. So any of the highly capitalized big box stores, they were great because they didn't get closed down, but Linda's, do you want me to move? Linda's Diner got shut down, the what? Yeah, I got to move now.
All right.
It'll only take a second. You can hit pause even.
If I don't need to, I won't. Is it okay?
Well, I've got to move. I got to do this move in 2 steps.
They include dancing, twisting.
Yeah.
What kind of two-step are you doing these days?
Actually, what I think I'll do is do it up in the loft.
This is better. This is actually better. This is better conversation for people to listen to.
I think I'll do it up in the loft. That's what I think I'll do.
They're going to listen to you two-step. Can you still hear me while I'm talking to you real quick?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, this is no problem.
So I would agree with your theory number 2, but I also would add to that is the testing mechanisms to see how effective they would be. And so I take it in 2 stages, right? I look at the first part of it with the actual virus itself. How willing will people comply? Not only comply, but how willing would they allow their civil liberties to be stripped away from them? Forget the Constitution, forget your rights. This is for the good of society, right?
Right.
So how willing were people to put the mask on? How willing were people to snitch on their neighbors?
The masking thing was a fiasco and a half because it was known for decades that masks do nothing, absolutely nothing.
It said it on the package. Dave, I got a package
I think the package is, yeah, I know. The problem is the pseudoscientists out there say, well, doctors wear them. And I go, that's so they don't get splatter in their mouth. No, the masking had been tested on flus, some like 30 clinical trials looking for a way to mask to protect against flus. They found nothing. And as a consequence, the idea of putting a bandana on your face was insanity. So the masking was about compliance, not about efficacy, which means, therefore, it wasn't about health. So now there's a darker third story. And the third story is an AI story. It's been bugging me lately. My brother sent me a video.
Is this in relation to 2020, though?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. This idea that as AI takes over, people become useless eaters, and we will not need all the manual laborers that we currently have and all the middle management that we currently have. And that you could make the argument that they're teeing up a major shrinkage of the global population.
Well, okay, so I mean, did I cut you off? Did you have more to add to that?
No, that's pretty much it.
So okay, so going back to 2020, so you have the masks, you have the snitching, the ability, people just surrendered their ability to work because they were getting. For
those who wonder all the glares, let me just do this once again. That's
so amazing.
That's where the glare's coming from.
Next time I come to visit you, I'm coming there.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome anytime.
So those things, right? They were testing the people, how far they were willing to comply. Then you had the death jab. I like to use the word death jab now. My friend,
right.
our mutual friend Michael Yan.
The kill shot, right?
Then you had that rollout where people's jobs are being lost. The military, there was no constitutional, didn't even matter in this whole situation. So
you also had local people in positions of authority, which are usually irrelevant, who wallowed in their authority during COVID, and that exacerbated it. So you're some local mayor. Who the hell cares? Well, now you're mayor of a city that you can just completely shut down and you can completely control. And so the egomaniacs were fed adrenaline.
The iron fist of the law on a local level to shut your business down.
The guys who chased people off of beaches and stuff like that. What kind of sick fucks?
Church. How about the basketball courts? Like the local basketball courts. This happened here. They put on the bottom of the rim, they would put a wooden board. So if you shot the basketball up there, it would come through. And then they put yellow tape around it. Right.
So we found out who were super douchebags right below the surface. So the response to COVID really kind of separated people into 2 categories. You could take the thing seriously, but you didn't have to be a douchebag about it.
Well, but bigger than that, though, this is the question now I ask myself: where we're at now and where we were back then. Who was in charge of the whole thing back then?
Well, see, I don't blame it on Trump as much as everyone else does.
But I at that time I didn't. But you know what? Now it doesn't matter. It was on his watch.
As Buckley Carlson said, it was on his watch.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Did you watch the Carlson interview?
No, my friend said it. My one friend said it was fantastic.
You ought to watch it. You ought to watch it.
But at this point now, 6 years later, it doesn't matter. And people for so long have, and still to this day, are still defending him and saying he got duped, he got duped, he got duped. He still praises those death jabs today.
So that's just his personal weakness. Though,
it doesn't
matter.
My
opinion.
It doesn't matter.
No, I know. No. But it does matter to the extent if you think that he was doing something nefarious at the time. I think at the time he delegated to a guy who looked like the right guy to delegate to from his perspective, who turned out to be a total psychopath. But if he had tried to fire Fauci, he would have been destroyed.
But you know what, though? That would have been the right thing to do.
It might have been the right thing to do, but he's a political animal.
The way he handled it was the wrong way to handle it. Now, I can't sit here and say that I would have, if I had been in that position, I'd have made all the right decisions. And you can Monday morning quarterback it all day long. But the fact of the matter is, you look back at that period, and this is what the struggle that I had in my head until I've just come to the realization. He was in charge. He locked the country down. Yes, he punted to the states. Doesn't matter. He was in charge. It doesn't matter. He would have sacrificed his political career to keep the country open. Wouldn't have got reelected. We ended up not getting reelected anyway, but that's a whole other conversation. But which we've talked about. But his political career probably would have been over. But he would have done the right thing.
Well, let me tell you something he should have done the right thing on that shows you that a higher level of cowardice, in my opinion. So I think he delegated. And I think that's what you had to do. Like when a CEO of a company has a big scandal, the first thing the CEO does is he delegates to a committee of elders because he has to keep running the company. And so you delegate it to some smart guys who say, you handle this chaos. I still have to run Merck. I still have to run Pfizer, that sort of thing. And that's the right thing to do. He still has to run the country. So he delegated, turned out he delegated to a complete shithead, and also an idiot. So as I've told you, I'm sure, I was on a Zoom call with Scott Alice, and Scott Alice was in the room with Fauci and Birx for 6 months in the Oval Office. And he said, you can't imagine how stupid those two are.
But
fathom how stupid
But
those
here's
two
the
are.
thing, though. He was part of those meetings at one point. And this is where, like, I've gotten, I mean, people want to give him a pass, like they can't get information to him because he's being guarded by people. I'm sorry, I can't accept that anymore.
I think it was just political cowardice. But worse political cowardice than that. And I hadn't even thought this through completely until I listened to Carlson. And Buckley pointed this out. And Buckley, by the way, is a very impressive guy. The people who start listening, if they're Trump haters, they're at great risk of turning it off. If they stay with it, by the end, they will get everything they want to hear. Because the two Carlsons go from why they supported him and what he meant and why he got elected, and it seems very supportive. And by the end, they're saying he has done nothing that he said he would do. So they totally hammer him. Now, the thing they hammer him on that really hit me like a truck was, for 4 years, the January 6th victims were rotting in prison cells, and he did nothing. He said nothing. He provided no help that anyone has ever mentioned. He let them rot in jail. He admittedly, and they conceded that he pardoned them when he got reelected. But if he hadn't gotten reelected, they'd be rotting in jail and under miserable conditions. I'd like to find out who the prison guards were and execute the bastards. I mean, I'm losing my mind on some of this shit. I was reading a post today about squatters. I've written about the squatters. Guys who go into your house while you're away. You come back, they're there, and somehow the law says you can't kick them out. I go, you walk in there and you say to the guy, look, if you're not out of here by Friday, you're going to die. It's that simple. You're going to die. And we're not going to have this conversation again. So I'm going to bring a baseball bat and I'm going to crush your fucking skull. And that would solve the problem. But you got to have the balls to do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I want to.
But Trump didn't have the balls to back the J6ers.
Well, because he didn't want to. He did not want to. Well, I don't know during that because he wasn't the president at that time. But you're right. He didn't, from my understanding, he didn't financially support. But look, I want to go back to 2020.
Not just financially. Well, he didn't even use the bully pulpit.
The what?
He didn't even talk. He didn't even use his mouthpiece. He was still an influential voice.
No, I know.
He didn't talk about them.
I know. Look.
He could have helped them. He could have said, look, they're being treated badly.
Tens of thousands of Americans were either injured, died, and we're not even talking about, and then factoring in the depression, the isolation. So this whole thing of like Trump smashing the cabal, I can't believe people. It's one thing if people are saying it, but the fact that people are still listening to it and believe it, they really believe it.
I can believe that he thought he was going to.
No, I'm talking about now.
Oh, now it's gone.
I never thought that.
He sold his soul.
Well, you saw after. I mean, look at how 2020 was handled.
Right.
I just when I still hear I don't hear as much anymore, thank God. But people, if somebody could get like a note to him, a sticky note to him, he's being guarded. Susie Wiles is guarding him.
Well, but the other thing you got to remember is that both parties, they were going at him pretty hard during that time. His defense was on the field because they were trying to make sure they destroyed him. So I give him some, not latitude, but given what I know of who he is, I understand why he did what he did at some level. And the high road would have not been what he did. I get it. But I do believe that delegating to Fauci was a fatal decision that looked fine at first. I didn't know Fauci was bad.
But he could have stepped in there pretty early on because he was.
I don't think he could have.
He could have.
He could have.
His political career would have been over, but he could have.
No, I think he would have been blamed for mass murder globally for taking Fauci out. I think they would have taken every death of COVID and said Trump did it.
It was inevitability anyway, though, because you ended up having mass injury and mass deaths from all this other stuff.
I know, but somehow he dodges that one. Now, what he should have done, the savvy move would have been to throw Fauci under the bus and say, look, I delegated. I thought it was the right thing. It didn't work. My bad. And I'd be willing to let him off the hook for that.
But what makes it so worse...
But he never did.
And he's still praising the death jab.
Yeah. That's insane.
And the fact that there's been no accountability, and there will not be any accountability. I don't buy any of these indictments are going to go anywhere. And again, I am not an absolutist. I am not 100% certain. I'm not in the room. And if I'm wrong, I will gladly come on here to whoever and admit I'm wrong. I'll write it on X 100 times, not 100 times, but I'll gladly admit it.
As you know, I'm admitting things I got wrong by this podcast. Because I was much more of an open-minded believer that Trump might still be playing 3D chess. The 3D chess model's destroyed.
It's ridiculous. Well, but here,
it's ridiculous.
So the thing,
I don't think it was ridiculous thinking he was playing 3D chess sometime back.
Oh, I thought it in 2020, but I didn't know any better. I was like, oh, these people. These people.
That's all of us.
Well, these people were researchers. I was so new to this whole scene. Like I was brand new. I wasn't. So I mean, I'm still not a student of history, but like I was like, oh, these people. The military is going to come in and they're going to take people out. Then that's what's going to happen. These guys are smart. Like Mar-a-Lago is going to be the new DC. And again, I didn't know any better. But then at what point do you start to take a step back and say, all right, this isn't happening. This is not happening. Obama is not getting indicted. I saw him sitting courtside at an NBA game. I've told the story a couple of times. Not that long ago. He didn't look very worried to me. sitting courtside watching basketball.
James Comey's not going to get thrown in prison. Brennan's not going to get thrown in prison, right?
I don't think this SPLC is going to go anywhere, the Southern Poverty Law Center.
No, not even close. Not even. It'll go the same distance that the Somali daycare story will go. Right? Nothing. It's just talking points. They're playing capture the flag.
And people are distracted.
They're playing capture the flag.
People are distracted. So we started this segment. We're talking about, Matt Smith's theory. And you've heard what he said about this, right? You've heard, like, him and I chat.
Remind me.
Well, how the parallels of 2020 and what's happening now with the Strait of Hormuz, and how there's energy lockdowns. No, you don't.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that already starting to sound like 2020, right?
And how the Strait of Hormuz is the.
Oddly, one of these days is going to be a necessity. It is going to be true.
Well,
but we're not going to believe it.
Every day that the strait is, you can't technically close it, right? But every day
you can technically make very little go through it.
Yeah, and I don't, and I forgot to look before we got on here to see how many ships are going through there now.
I think it's 10%.
Oh,
something like that.
Because I think it was 150 a day before this started, roughly. Okay. So if it's 10%, you're saying 15, give or take. So
that's the number.
So 90%
I've been sick
decrease.
For a couple days. Yeah,
right,
I understand.
Right. So there's no bombs exchanges going on right now, but the fact that strait is closed, and I look at that and I'm like, neither side is really motivated to open this thing. It seems like.
Well, I think we are, but I think we don't want to do what we have to do to get it open.
Dave, not we. I got nothing to do with this.
They, but
a military. I started saying they. I started saying they. Not to interrupt you. I started saying they because I don't say we anymore because I'm not involved in any of this.
Their pronouns are they them. The U.S.-Israel triumvirate. Israel. We all win by different mechanisms. One is the U.S. would have won by not getting into it. They failed. Right. So the U.S. already has lost, in my opinion. Iran, I think, wins by not being destroyed and making the world suffer. Because I think Iran, if they can survive this first hit, then the rest of the world will say, okay, note to self, never let Israel do that again.
You were on a podcast with Simon Dixon.
Yes.
So you know his theory on all this.
It was complicated. It was one of those ones I was having trouble staying with. I kept trying to get details out of it. It was hard to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's saying
kind of a City of London feel to it.
Yeah. It's a certain narrative. I don't know.
But he's very smart. I don't want to undermine.
Yeah, no. I'm not saying that either. I just he was saying that the whole thing is political theater. I partially believe that. I don't know. I mean, I shouldn't say partially. I believe that this is theater, but it just makes me wonder. All right, is it even a country? Aaron Day was on here the other day, and it was like it's not a country versus country thing. It's a technocrat versus technocrat war.
Well, the whole thing could be so-called globalists attempting to destroy borders, attempting to destroy sovereign states, the ideas of sovereign states, turning the Middle East into what Patrick Wood would call a technate. So, region rather than countries, regions, and the Middle East would be a region. So you got sort of the Asia northern region you'd call Russia, Soviet flavor, then the U.S. and then maybe the Middle East, that sort of thing, and so it could all be part of this very long game, which requires it to be thoughtful. This idea, this 3D chess, and so you have to go back to do you really believe they're playing 3D chess? I don't know. I do believe there's people who want to destroy us. I don't doubt that. Is this about U.S. versus China? I keep hearing it's really not about Iran. It's about China. At some level, I can fathom it. At another level, I have trouble knowing exactly what that means. What does that mean? Okay, so Iran sells its oil to China. That means China will be consuming Iran's oil, not someone else's oil. So what? I don't, if you believe Doomberg, there's tons of oil in the world.
It's just it's so fascinating, the digital world we're in, and you hear different sides of things, and people are so passionate about their sides, and I don't know. I mean, you're right. I was on that conversation with you with Doomberg talking about the excess amount of oil. There is no peak oil, but then you have, and I've heard the China argument. I've heard
but I don't even know what the China argument is.
To hurt them, to basically hurt them by cutting off or cutting down their oil supply.
Why hurt China, right? China's going to become an industrial power, and it's going to get stronger and stronger no matter what we do. China's going to get oil from somewhere. They don't get it from Iran, they'll get it from Russia. Oil's fungible. So cutting off an Iranian-China connection just means that someone will take their oil from Iran and China will get its oil from wherever they were getting their oil. It's just the oil market's global.
What I don't understand, if this is part of the global reset, how does that look? I mean, maybe nobody understands it. I'm just trying to think of like day to day. If they're trying to, if in fact these people, the intention is to crash the system, then what does that new system look like under I don't want to say CBDC, because I feel like we're in kind of a CBDC, because you do everything on your phone anyway now.
Well, this also could be the tech world taking over the rest, the real world.
Like the Palantir and the OpenAI and And there was this podcast that my brother sent to me. It was Megyn Kelly interviewing a guy. I got followed by Megyn Kelly. So did I.
A big one.
So did I.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's impressive.
How long ago?
That's impressive. About
I hope it's not the same day, because maybe she was doing mass followings or something.
No, she doesn't follow. It's a healthy number. It's not like 20 or it's not like 200, but it's not
like 4,000.
Yeah, it's something, but it's out of like 10 million, so that's still pretty good. And she interviewed this AI guy, and she said the analogy that caught my attention was, he said, in countries that they're very rich in resources, Nigeria, things like that, right? They tend not to take care of their people well at all, because they get their money from the resources, not from the people. So you don't have to cater to the people. And he says that if you look at AI that way, as AI becomes more and more dominant, robotics, AI, so you have the mechanical function of robots, you have the AI function of the brain, thinking, management, stuff like that. They're not going to have to cater to the useless eaters. And so we could end up being like, like when the Spanish started bringing gold over from the New World. They were fantastically wealthy, but they completely failed to build an economy. So every other European country built an economy selling shit to Spain. And Spain just brought the gold. So Spain looked like they were doing great, but now they're a banana republic.
But do you think the AI, do you think it's as much hype as around it? Do you think it's there yet?
I don't think it's there yet, but I think it's going to come very, very quickly. And I think I just heard Paul Tudor Jones say, he was talking to a friend of his of equal prominence, and he said, we're going to wish we could put this one back in the bottle. And I believe that. I think it's possible that the day the internet went live, we were guaranteed to head for an authoritarian state.
Well, yeah. I mean, you've said that before, and I agree. But it's anything, right? The more technology, the more the government will come in and just slowly tighten the noose on you. And that's what 2020...
Yeah, but the digital noose looks really unprecedented to me.
But I also, as much as I sound like I'm a doomer all the time, or a lot of times, I also think, though, the people, they might not necessarily just go along with all this, and they'll come up with alternatives, and they'll come up with ways.
What was 2020 about?
Oh, they turning it back on me.
Yeah. Well, it's the Soviet Union about, right? The Soviet Union knew it. Life sucked. It's called hyper-normalization. You get used to it.
That's why, you know what I was thinking about? It's funny that we're talking today. I was thinking this whole idea with the oil, right, in the Middle East, because they're saying right when it usually gets around 115.
By the way, you want to know what a good beverage is, those listening? You get skim milk and you add a couple of Splenda.
Oh.
And it tastes like a milkshake.
Oh.
With no calories to speak of.
I just drink coffee. What do you think of my new setup?
Didn't even notice.
The coffee and a Mike mug.
Coffee and a Mike.
You see the
Mike mug. I also saw.
You see the book?
You
see the book? Preparation?
Yeah.
And then I got to have my Cleveland statue of Bob Feller, and I'm going to have a Cleveland mug added on here because this show would not be complete without Cleveland.
I lost my office because we had a flood. So in about a 2-week period, we had a flood. My wife broke her ribs. I got sick. My son was said to have a 4-centimeter.
Matt Bracken's book, one of his books.
Have you read it yet?
Not this one. And I have a couple of Jim's books on here too.
Yeah, Jim's got so many.
So with the price of oil, and you see how it's been going up, down, up, down. And
I don't think the price of oil is reflecting a reality.
Well, so let me finish my thought, because you like what you just said about normalization. Are they doing this to just normalize us to what the higher, like kind of slowly? I feel like they just manipulate this whole system, and they're just slowly, like the slow burn right now to get you used to. They can't just shell shock you.
Well, here's what I'll tell you.
$4 a gallon to $6.
The Nasdaq is on an all-time record run in a period of time where the Nasdaq should be getting clobbered. The Nasdaq, they say markets look forward. There's no chance these markets are looking forward. By the way, were the markets looking forward in 1929? Did they see the Great Depression coming? No. Markets don't look forward. That's bullshit. Were the markets in Japan in 1989, were they looking forward? No. They didn't see 35 years of bullshit coming their way. And so markets don't look forward. Markets live in the present. And the present right now is absurd. The present's a 99 percentile run in the NASDAQ, for example. It's something like 14 days in a row. It went up, and then it went down for a day, and it's running again. It's up percent today. And so I believe, here's what I believe probably happens. Years ago, George Bush Jr., well, I'm reading Family of Secrets again, because I wasn't ready to appreciate the darkness of the Bush family when I read it, because I just kind of didn't believe it. I didn't buy it. Now it seems tame. About the Bush family and Poppy Bush, George Bush Sr. probably was involved in Kennedy's assassination, and there's all sorts of shit that they were involved in. And I lost my train of thought there. Oh, so George Bush Jr. was giving a speech one day, and the markets were tanking. And I think someone said, don't ever let that happen again. I don't want to be up there at the podium with the markets tanking while I'm speaking. So I said, sir, yes, sir. So what do? What you do is you say to a couple of CEOs of major brokerages, we don't want these markets tanking. We want you to go long. We want you to put serious money into the markets. Now, you can say, well, I'm not stupid. Well, being stupid would be the guy looking at this saying, well, if everyone else is being told this and I don't do it, I'm going to be left in the dust. So I got to catch it. So if the president tips off a bunch of guys saying, we're going to go long, right? Everyone run to the end zone. We'll throw a long bomb. You better be in the end zone when that ball's in the air, right? And so I think it's quite possible they just said, look, we're going to make sure the markets go up. So, make sure you're on for the ride, and then you don't actually have to do anything. You don't have to pump any money into it or anything. The speculators just take it there for you. And if that's true, then there's going to be yet a greater day of reckoning. I keep being astonished at how the markets. there's so few people left in the world, which is why I wanted to talk to Eddie Dowd, because he's one of the few who understands how far out of whack these markets are and what it means. Eddie Dowd will tell you the markets are going to probably drop 70%. He's one of the only people, him, Stephanie Pomboy, there's a few, but there's people who say the markets are ridiculous or due for a correction. I go, no, they're not due for a correction. They're due to rip your fucking ass off. They're due to destroy your life. It's that bad. They're 200% over historical average valuation. If you're a boomer and you have $3 million in the bank and you think you're cooking, and you look up 4 or 5 years from now and you have 1 million, I hope you can live on 1/3 the budget that you were planning on having, because that's where you're going to be. You're going to be living on 1/3 what you thought you were going to be able to spend.
So do you think this will continue to be slow burn? Or do you think could you see some kind of drastic drop off?
I don't think drastic drop offs work, because there's so much muscle memory in the system. That's a Bill Fleckenstein term. The muscle memory for the last 35, 45 years has been buy the dip. Every single time you've bought the dip, you've been compensated. How could you not buy the dip? The dip in 2009, at the very, very bottom of 2009, the markets were at the average, the 110-year average valuation of the S&P. They weren't cheap. They were finally back to normal. But the dip buyers show up. Precipitous declines. The way you correct the markets in earnest, you knock the investors down, they get up, you knock them down, they get up, you knock them down, and you get them to the point where they say, I will never buy another fucking equity. I will never buy another fucking bond, because, by the way, they're both going to tank simultaneously, in my opinion. So the interest rates are going to be going up. The equities are going to be going down. You're going to be getting hit both in fixed income and in your equity portfolio and in your real estate portfolio. Right? What are you not going to be getting hit in that's of any consequence? The answer is nothing. Right? Melody would tell you, yeah, we're getting that nest egg you call a house is not going to be worth what you thought it was worth.
It's not worth it now, probably.
It isn't worth it now, but it isn't yet showing up. You can kind of pretend like, oh, it's not moving, but I'll sell it. So at some point, that sort of thing. So you need real bear market bottoms are established by demoralizing the investors. And as long as people are looking for dips and buying the dips, there'll be no sharp drops. Dip buyers will show up. You go down 20%, dip buyers are going to show up. You go down 20%, dip buyers show up, goes up 10%. Then it starts going down again. Dip buyers will show up, drop another 20, go up 10%. Dip buyers, at some point, they will just stop showing up. The passive flows will stop. But I know guys who think the passive flows aren't going to stop in any foreseeable future. There's just this wall of the tsunami of savings. But where's all the savings come from with all? And I would argue it's just inflation. I did a podcast with someone who's talking about the consumer is resilient. I go, what do you mean? He said, well, they're putting huge amounts of, they're putting huge amounts on their credit card. I said, well, that's because everything costs more.
Yeah, I've had him on here a few times. Hopefully I get a chance to talk to him again soon. It's Craig Fuller over at Freight Waves. And he's very optimistic from the supply chain standpoint of the trucking, saying, we're in for really, I don't remember what his exact words were, but we're in for great times. But I think to myself, and I'm going to ask him, because the cost of everything, I mean, you go to a regular restaurant. For a regular restaurant, I'm not talking anything fancy. For a sandwich and fries, $26.
Right. You go through the drive-through window of McDonald's, it's $12, $13, $14 for one person.
What's a pound of ground beef cost you at the store now?
Like $6. And they say that inflation's 2 or 3%. No, it's not. Tell me something that's not going up.
I remember
right?
I remember in 2008 talking to somebody in banking, and they were talking about the mark-to-market accounting and how they were changing it. And somebody can correct me on this, but like they were changing it so they could resume lending again. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, this whole thing. That's what was my first eye-opening experience of like this whole system is just one big fugazi. After all that.
Well, so
then
actually, the 0809 crisis might have been triggered by a FASB. I think it was FASB 157, where it was a tightening of the mark-to-market rules, and that all of a sudden caused a quick tightening of the liquidity in the system. But liquidity is just code word for inflation and debt. Just inflation and debt.
So they put out this report of saying inflation is, this percentage, but yet you're on the street and you feel it, right? I mean, Look at gas. I mean, this is one of the things that Matt Smith said too in that conversation from a while back, which I encourage people, if you haven't listened to it, you should, because it's really good. He said it's gotten to a point that Trump is harming the country more than he's helping it right now. And that was before. I mean, gas prices today in Phoenix are almost $5 a gallon. Might even be above that now.
Wow. I have no idea. But gas is also one of these things where there's secondary effects that you don't think of as the price of gas. Like the price of diesel is more important than the price of gas, right? Because the price of diesel dictates the price of more goods and services than the price of gas, supposedly. But there's nothing. Your insurance isn't going up 3%. Your taxes are not going up 3%. Nothing's going up 3%.
Why is my insurance going up? Like why?
A guy mows my fucking lawn, right? And he sends this letter, and it was cryptic, and I think a guy who mows your lawn maybe doesn't have command of the English language, but he says, we got the same crew back this year, and so that's good, and just because of the state of everything going on, you're going to go up this much. It was like a 40% increase. What does that mean? The state of the economy is going to go up 40%. If he had to hire a new crew and had to pay more or something, I'd understand it.
But landscaping,
and I'm not blaming him. I'm not blaming him. But he's not the liar.
Landscaping, I get, like because of the materials, the gas. But insurance. Why is my insurance going up? I don't file claims.
Everybody. So if I told you 40 years ago that health care was going to skyrocket in cost, would you have bought health insurers as an investment? The first order approximation would be no, right? Their costs are going to soar. Well, it turns out underneath that soaring cost, they're able to increase their prices even more. They're able to hide the price increase. They say, well, it's gone up 10%, and we'll just make it 12. Right? And so everyone's doing this. I just had an experience the other day where I had a guy, I had for a place water heater, and he said, I went back to the shop, and the boss said we should go with 250 gallon. We have a kind of a bigger tub, 250 gallon. He wants to charge me $5,200. He told me A.O. Smith hot water heaters. So I'm looking up A.O. Smith hot water heaters. It's like $700 a piece. I go, okay, we're up to $1,400. Where do he came in with an estimate of $5,200. I go, how much labor? And he says, well, 2 guys, 3 hours, $155 an hour. And I do some quick math. I go, okay, you're still $2,000 short of $5,200. And he just didn't have an answer. So everyone's just jacking it. This is what inflation expectation is. Under the cover of prices going up, people make prices go up even more. They just start gutting. I used to pay a guy $40 to plow my driveway last year, not this winter, previous winter. And it seemed clear he didn't want to do it anymore. And so we hired a guy, and they said, and we couldn't find anyone. The group we finally got, we shared a driveway, and they said, minimum 8 plows. The previous winter, I'd done 1. Big winter might be 4. He said minimum 8 plows. None of this, 4 inches or greater crap. We'll plow when we think it's appropriate. And it was $180, which we split between the 2 houses. But I'm going, that's like a 20-fold increase in the cost of plowing my fucking driveway.
Do you see a scenario? Do you see lockdowns coming back?
Lockdowns based on energy, that sort of thing? What?
Yes. And I say that because usually the response, and I don't know if just what your response is going to be, but before you answer it, people will say, oh, people aren't going to comply. That's not what I mean.
I think they will.
Well, I do too. Oh, okay. So you answered differently than I thought. Because I think they're going to take it out of the equation this time. There will be shortages at the gas station.
Right.
You won't be able to fly. They'll just shut the airports down.
What is it? Lufthansa just cut 20,000 flights, right? Did they have to? I don't know. That might have been the first shot across the bow of the populace. Right? Did they have to? I don't know. Did you see the interview of the Shah from the 1970s during the oil crisis?
No.
And he says,
who was that with?
The Shah of Iran. I think Mike Wallace. I met Mike Wallace one day on the beach. I was fishing. Some guy says, catch any? And I turned around and said, no. And I look, it's Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace is interviewing him. And the Shah, you can just send me an email. I'll send you the link. And the Shah says, we were pumping as much oil as we ever pumped. And he's being cryptic, but the implication is that there wasn't a shortage of oil. It was some scam. The Shah of Iran was implying it was a scam. And that the alternating days, like, let's think about alternating days. What do they achieve?
See, I was too young.
How many times?
I was born in 78.
Okay, but if alternating days where, your license plate ends with an even number, an odd number, whatever, that doesn't restrict how much oil you use. Right. That means instead of getting oil randomly, getting gas randomly, you get it on Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday. Right? It doesn't in any way restrict how much you're going to get. But they created the crisis site, potentially. I'm not sure I believe it, but I also am quite sure that I believe it's way more possible than I ever would have believed.
Well, especially after 2020 too, right? I mean, government creates a problem, provides a solution. You're not going to like the solution, but they provided solutions. And that's what I feel like that's what's happening now. Or it's about to happen now. When I dug into the history
of World War II, you remember I Diana West interview, podcasts? Yeah. And World War II, we got lied to about what World War II was about. We got lied to about what started World War I. It wasn't an archduke. I've read the definitive treatise on World War I, according to the guy, Ben Steele, who wrote The Battle of Bretton Woods. I said, Ben, can you give me a book on World War I? He said, Europe's Last Summer. The archduke gets shot. No one gives a fuck. He was a douchebag. The Germans have to pester the Austrians to get pissed. The Germans are pushing him, right? You go, well, that means the Germans are bad. No, the problem was that the British were looking to fight the Germans, and the Germans realized if they wait, the British will be stronger. So they either got to fight them now and they have a chance of winning, or fight them later when guys like Churchill, who was, I think, a douchebag. I know he's been deified, but Churchill in 1935 was quoted as saying, it looks like we're going to have to pick a fight with Germany. That's not German aggression. That's Churchill admitting they're going to go to war with Germany. And if you're Hitler, you're going to be going, well, okay, if they're going to fight us, we at least want to do it on our terms.
What was Vietnam about? What was accomplished there?
No idea. And by the way, if you read about how we fought the Vietnam War, it was horrifying. It's worse. We fought it as a terrorist operation. I can't remember the title of the book I read this year, But we'd go into, the My Lai massacre, for example, the My Lai massacre where Lieutenant Calley got sent up the river for 20 years for destroying a village. His defense was that was standard operating procedure. That's how we did it.
I had Matt Ho on a couple days ago, and he worked for the Pentagon.
I hear his mother's a hoe.
Whole family. I'm sure he's never heard that before, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But he was talking about his time at the Pentagon in early 2000s, and he's like, I worked for these people. They were talking, there'll never be another Vietnam. And I'm like, did you believe? Because this goes back to the 5D chess thing. The government knows what they're doing. They're going to cause destruction, but there's going to be a solution on the back end, on the other side of it. He's like, and I said, did you believe him? He goes, I did, because at that time, these people were in Vietnam. They said they participated in the battle, in combat.
Right.
And, they were saying
awful.
They were saying this was not going to be another Vietnam. He goes, so not only did we create one Vietnam, we created two Vietnams during that whole thing, during the Bush administration.
Right.
So, it's like you look at all this stuff. I don't even know how I got to that point, but you look at all this stuff. It's like, what was it all for? What was the purpose of it all?
Well, you've got the stock answer, which is the domino theory, which personally I've never been able to figure out why we cared if Southeast Asia became communist. Who cares, right? They want to self-destruct by picking a flawed socioeconomic system and let them do it. I'm so over the idea that we're somehow in charge of making people live lives the way we think that'll live them.
Can I share something with you that a friend of mine pointed out? Everything, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. You notice
I don't buy that story at all.
No, I don't either. But do you notice how nobody fucks with North Korea?
They have nuclear weapons.
But nobody ever fucks with them.
No, it is true that once they get the nuclear weapons, then it's hands off.
You don't even hear about them anymore, hardly.
But I also think Iran tried to play it the other way and say, look, we don't want or have nuclear weapons, so you don't have to play this game. The question I've asked repeatedly is, what could Iran have said before this war started that would have stopped the war? What could they have said?
Nothing.
Well,
then you go back to, you haven't met Kevork yet, but Kevork Almasyan, who does the Syriana analysis, fascinating guy. But I did a show with him and Matt Bracken. I was thinking you had done one with him too. But he was saying, we trace back the steps, the campaign. Soleimani was first, and Gaza, then Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, with pagers. And then Syria, and now Iran.
Well, they tried Syria before when Obama was there, and they kept making up stories that wouldn't hold together. All the gas attacks were shown to be frauds, and they just couldn't come up with a narrative that could be marketed at the time. It was patently bizarre. I mean, they were recycling bodies, they were faking gas cylinders. It's totally absurd. So they couldn't get the let's go bomb Syria drumbeat going loud enough. I still can't figure out why we wanted to fight Syria. And it's like, so so-and-so can't put a pipeline through. I go, it's not our business. Maybe I'm just being a pussy. Maybe this is just the law of the jungle.
I have a friend, we talk on the phone a lot, and he's convinced that everybody, this is the other thing too, Matt Smith wrote an article about narratives, right? Everybody's got their narratives. Right. And
I like that article. He sent that to me. I thought it was very good.
I did too. And because everybody has their narratives, and they'll remove components as long as their narrative stays intact. Mm-hmm. But the idea of this one person in particular talks about, the United States long-term security and energy. And then I always come back and I say, okay, show me a war where regular people benefit from this. Because they never do. Never. And so I guess I don't understand the geopolitical world, but isn't the whole point of government is to serve the people? We have a slave...
No.
Right.
No.
We have a slave system. Thinking. We have a slave tax system. We're slaves.
what happened is we went from, this came through really clearly in a podcast recently I listened to. We went from a system where to get elected, you had to go back to your constituents and you had to raise money by saying, look what I've done for you. Look how I'll help you. Please put me back in Congress for another term. And so you had to basically respond to your constituents' needs, right? Now, who said this? I just saw this. Now you can basically camp out in Washington, D.C., and about 4 or 5 lobbyists can give you, oh, this is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She said about 4 or 5 lobbyists can give you enough money to pay for your campaign. So you don't need to cater. So they don't need our opinion. They don't in any way. Like I did a poll said, should we, what the fuck was it? Should we, I can't remember what the poll was. Hold on, I'm going to find it. It was 90% no. I can't get to it because I can't log into goddamn Twitter. Someone tried to hack my Twitter feed. I had to do 2-step login, and I don't have my phone, and fuck it. It's like 90% hell no. I said, therefore, it's definitive they're going to do it. No one supported the bailouts in 2008. And Congress said no to the bailouts. Then 2 weeks later, they said yes to the bailouts. It was all kayfabe. They knew they were going to get the bailouts. Someone said it interestingly. They said, do you really think billionaires are being told what to do by AOC?
Do you even care about the midterms anymore?
No, not a bit.
I don't either.
Not a bit. What I'd like is there to be some repercussion, some consequence of our misdeeds.
Never.
That was real. Well, there are. Yes, there are.
No, I'm sorry. I cut you off. Look at me talking as much as I am today. I'm usually
well, we're really just chatting today. Usually you're.
Well, Michael actually messaged. Michael Jan messaged me.
Oh. So
is it too late for him to? Too late for him.
He can jump in anytime he wants.
You doing okay on time?
Yeah. So they just don't have to answer to the repercussion. I gotta say this before Jan gets on.
If he comes on.
This will get me in big trouble. This will get me in really big trouble. If someone gets a hold of it. No, fuck him. Fuck him. I think a best possible outcome is for Iran to kick our ass. We need to learn that war is hell. Sherman marched on Atlanta to bring the hellishness of war to the South. He wasn't a douchebag. He had to show them the horrors of war. We have been fighting wars in which there seems to be no consequence. We watch it on TV. We think it's a game show. We watch General Schwarzkopf. They shoot missiles right through keyholes of doors. We go, oh, that's so cool. Look at the way they do that. And there is a cost, but not one we can detect because it's an inflation. And the guys who get killed are guys who signed up. They're usually from the hood somewhere. They're from, low-income families. So the average viewer doesn't care because you don't have to sign up. And once in a while, Pat Tillman gets whacked. Okay. We are long overdue to learn the lesson that war is hell. And I think possibly the best thing we could learn from this war is that it sucks. And right now we haven't yet learned it because we're still able to get gas, we're still able to get helium, we're still able, but if the story of the narratives are true, we're about to run into some problems. Now, are they true? I don't know. But all the goods and services that do depend on the Strait of Hormuz, which presumably are quite a few. I mean, as soon as this war broke out, I sent an email to the director of our NMR facility, said, get as much helium as you can, because you're not going to be getting any soon. And so I think we have to suffer from this one. And that's why I think Iran's got to win. they've got to wait until we're suffering.
If it comes back to full circle again, if it's country versus country, if this isn't a bigger COVID was the audition, this is the next stage.
I think Israel bombing Lebanon and Gaza and Iran, it's real personal. I don't think this is some big kayfabe in that sense.
I don't know, man.
I don't think
this great reset, maybe there's some legitimacy to this whole great reset because, look at what they're doing right now. I mean, you're talking fertilizer, gas, oil, helium. And I can't believe that they did.
Do you know if Michael thinks there's going to be starvation in parts of the world? I think he's
been talking about that forever.
Right. Well, if the fertilizer doesn't get to its target, I don't know about backlogs. Maybe there's a calendar year of fertilizer backlog, right? I don't know. But if it's planting season, there's no fertilizer, someone's not going to be eating.
I just had Craig Tyndale on out of Australia, and he was talking about the El Nino that we're in. And I'll tell you, I mean, in Arizona, I know it's Arizona in the desert, but we already hit 107 mid-March. And they were I just read this yesterday. This is why, and I'll say it publicly, this is my last year here. This is it.
I was in Arizona, it was 118. And my host said, at least it's dry heat. And I said, yep, it doesn't feel a degree over 114.
But 118 and 114, it's irrelevant. Anything over 110 is really irrelevant.
That was my point. That was my point, right.
But they're saying that this is going to move into stage 2 by the end of the year of drought. So I'm like, okay, what is stage 2? So they're saying they're going to start doing surcharges for water usage, which coming back to how government is, they're going to overcharge you for everything.
Did you see Lake Powell has dropped 9 feet in 1 year?
Well, Lake Mead too.
Well, they're together.
Yeah, right.
They're joined.
Right. But Lake Mead, I mean, I was a kid. I used to go on Lake Mead because my family's been there since the 70s.
Yeah.
And
now you got to climb down the cliff to get to Lake Mead.
Well, they were finding bodies.
I know, in barrels.
Containers.
I wrote about that, yeah.
Well, and here's the other thing, too, is, so you get the water aspect. I mean, I think Vegas is double screwed. I mean, to the point where, I have young...
Vegas should not exist. Vegas was never meant to be a city.
No, I like what Jim says regards to both Vegas and Phoenix. It was a good idea at the time. It wasn't designed. It was a good idea. But Vegas...
You can even argue California was a good idea at the time.
But that's a big state. There's a lot of resources there, a lot of farming.
Right, but California, the 20th century was the wettest century in 10. So they built up California during the wettest century. Now, I think industrial world can find ways to get water from the mountains down to California if they do it right. With Newsom as governor, forget it. But if Lake Mead and Lake Powell go below the output spigots,
it's going to go there. How will it not go there? Unless some
I don't know.
Unless some biblical God, tons of rain. But here's the other thing about Vegas. The gambling has all changed.
It's not even gambling anymore.
It's all on the phone.
Right.
It's all at the tip of your fingers. Young people can't afford to go there, and they don't want to go there and spend money at casinos like that.
So the casinos are it's more of an entertainment capital. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, they have restaurants, they have shows.
They're
but
expensive, too.
Everything's expensive. I mean, I just saw a vlog where a girl was saying, was it $13? I think $8 or $13 for a bottle of water. Even $8 is ridiculous.
I used to give talks at Stansbury Conference in Las Vegas. Didn't seem that bad at the time, but that was probably 10 years ago. But
the gambling today...
Have you heard the rain story in Iran, though? There's a story about rain in Iran.
No.
So what's clear is cloud seeding works, right? We know how to seed clouds. What's also clear is that there's some curious evidence that cloud seeding is used as a weapon. It's maybe the chemtrails, maybe not the chemtrails, that sort of thing. But my brother says in Florida, on a number of occasions, he's had rain come down where it just seems to not be any source of rain. He says it's really very strange. but you could weaponize cloud seeding, and within the water rights of the West, for example, you can imagine saying, no, you can't seed the clouds over here because you're stealing our water, that sort of thing. Well, supposedly after the Iran war started, the Iranians took out the cloud seeding facilities in their neighbors, and they're now getting rain after a long drought.
I never heard that.
Check that out. Just Google it or something and search it on Twitter. And they're sitting there and they're getting downpours. They're going, oh man, we were getting deprived of water. Now, I got to figure the Iranian intelligence knew this, right? They had to know it. But that to me, seeding clouds so that you are in a drought, that's an act of war, right? Easily. So I don't have bad feelings for the Iranians.
What do you think?
I know the Zionists right now are ready to kill me, but fuck it, you already happened. So
can't be worse than what it was last summer.
Yeah, last summer was fun. Laura Loomer, the master clickbaiter.
Man, I had her on my show a couple of years ago. It was before that. It was longer than that. Now it was before October 7th.
Face treatment and all that shit.
Well, no, it was before October 7th that I had her on. Because, look at, in the beginning, I mean, she was, I don't know, it seemed like she was breaking stories and, getting to the truth.
She actually was one of the few working on the Las Vegas shootings.
Which, speaking of, what's his name? He never resurfaced. John.
Who? John Collum?
Yeah.
There's a guy out there who says he knows he's alive. But I don't know what to make of it.
But she was working for James O'Keefe in the beginning, back when I can't even
She's losing her mind.
Well,
she's really losing her mind.
Project Veritas. But I wonder with all this stuff now, like when Project Veritas was full steam and James O'Keefe, I was like, oh, this guy's amazing. But then you look at it now and you're just like, I don't know.
He would get some low-level guy fessing up to some low-level bullshit. He'd make an hour show out of 2 minutes of news. Yeah.
But some of these people I don't take as seriously anymore because they went from not trusting the government to all in on the government. And like they just want to get to Mar-a-Lago.
Well, the horror story is that Levin and Loomer seem to have Trump's ear.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I buy that. Maybe they do.
Well, I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows? I don't know. But I also think like you have the Independent Media Awards last year. They were at Mar-a-Lago. How is that not a conflict of interest?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Isn't it?
How was Saturday night? You've got both sides are at this White House Correspondents' Dinner, and they're under the table, supposed to be terrified. They're taking selfies.
Right.
Not only are they taking selfies, and they're grabbing their bottles of wine or champagne or whatever it was, and making sure they're taking that with them when they leave.
Right.
Let them eat cake.
No,
let them eat cake.
These are like Saturday softball, and after the game, both teams go out and get shit-faced in a bar.
It's a big club, man, right? Big club, and we ain't in it.
We ain't in it. Not even close. And no one above a certain level is ever going to get convicted of anything and not get pardoned.
It's never even going to get to that point. It's never. I shouldn't say it's never.
It has in the not so distant past, but you're right. Might not get to that point going forward.
I shouldn't say never because now I'm talking like I know and I'm an absolutist and I'm not. But I'm confident in saying none of these people, and yet it's still circulating. This stuff is still circulating. How long are people going to hold on to this idea? 6 years. Well, maybe 5.5 years. Some point you have to surrender and say, okay.
But the second term has been particularly steep downslope because it started off euphoric.
What a
victory!
I never bought into it though. You remember? I warned people.
I know.
I said.
I know.
Now, mind you, I voted, but I said right out of the gate. Because as it got closer, I was like, big tech is behind him now. They weren't behind him in 2020.
But I figured at some level he kind of owned them.
No, I never thought that. Never thought that.
Well, not owned them, but that they had to come to his team.
Never thought that.
So
I was right about. I was one thing I was right about, I guess.
Well,
but I didn't think he'd win either, though. Remember, I didn't think he would win. I also didn't think Iran would happen. I didn't think the war with Iran would happen. I was wrong on that.
That just seems incomprehensibly stupid. And so do you think he thought it would be a hit and run and he'd be able to, sever the head off the serpent quickly and then be a hero? Do you think he got duped?
I don't even want to do the duped anymore. I don't even want to associate that with him being duped.
I got to figure that the guys who are working with him are working with world-class psychologists coaching them on how to deal with the narcissists like Trump.
But they're all narcissists when you get to that level.
I know.
You don't get to that level. You're not getting to that level and being a family home every night for dinner.
No.
When I hear people say Trump's a narcissist, I'm like, there's no way. And that probably is for every CEO of every major corporation.
Truly, but Bill Clinton is a sociopath and a narcissist, but he hid it well. He was so poorly behaved that he kept getting caught, but he hid it well. Trump doesn't hide it at all. And it made no sense to me. So I thought maybe this guy is just calling balls and strikes. I don't know. That was the hope. So the thing about Trump was it's not that he was a great hope. It's that he was our last hope. Because I don't believe that Vance or Rubio or any of these guys are going to bring order out of chaos.
I think it's the big machine behind all these people. And for whatever reason, it benefited them to put him back in office, where it didn't in 2020. And this is the thing, too, with the midterms. If Democrats, let's say they take back the House and Senate, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to stop this. Okay, so they impeach him. That's going to be theater. He won't get removed.
Right. It'll
be theater. It'll be entertainment.
It might be a positive in the sense that it might neuter him. And at this point,
they're not going to stop him, Dave. They're not going to stop him.
I don't know. I thought they kept him kind of on the ropes in his first term.
Who were they? Did Biden deny anything in the Middle East during his time in office? I mean, October 7th happened on his watch. Were they denied any type of technology, resources during that whole time? Why do people think that the Democrats are going to come into power, that things are going to change? It's a uni-party.
Oh, no. They're not going to. No.
They might impeach him for the theater.
Oh, they will. They will
maybe
chase him for the theater.
But you know what, though? Why would they get him out of office? He's doing the bidding for the...
I'm not sure they'll get him out of office for the theater.
But he's doing the bidding for them, whoever them is. And you know what?
Right,
The other thing with that now, though, too, I'll credit Matt Smith for this. Last time I credit him, because people think I'm like a fanboy or something, but I think he's right on this. Does it matter who they or them is anymore? It doesn't matter.
No.
To individuals like you and I, it's irrelevant.
No, we're just peons.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, whether it's City of London or Israel or, I don't know, Uzbekistan or New York bankers.
Our lives could get more wretched. And anything we can do to slow that process down. Right? So you do want them to fear the masses at some level. Right? You want the government to fear the masses at some level.
Here's the issue with that. And I'm not calling for violence. But when I hear the talk...
But that is the fear.
No, but here's the thing with that. Because I've heard the whole Civil War thing. You don't know who the enemy is. You don't know. So...
That's exactly right.
The idea of, massing some type of movement or going to a certain... The enemy is invisible. The enemy is invisible.
Also maybe they want us to to fight amongst each other. Civil war does not necessarily hurt the elites.
And they have technology on their side.
Well, that's what scares me.
So if you're that much of a threat, like 2020, well, not only are you debanked, but in 2020 they just used the neighbors to shut the country down.
Right.
I never heard back from Michael, so.
Okay.
Michael just said if you could send link, I can do now. Do you want to be on here for another hour?
Sure, I can do it if you want.
All right, so we have a special.
We can chat briefly.
Special.
If I have to hop off, you guys can keep going. Break some podcast world record. There was some event where Mario Nufal ran a 24/7 stream. What event was that?
I think he's coming.
God damn it!
What do you want to talk about, Michael? Let's talk about what he's worth.
Throw the ball to him.
Let's talk about what he's. Yeah. Yeah, Mario. He puts out
volumes. But he did a 24-hour stream where they were running 24 hours a day. And I can't remember what event. It was some really, sort of quickly changing sequence of events. It was about 2 years ago. I guess it could have been the COVID.
Have you ever done his show?
No. I've had exchanges with him or his staff. You don't know who you're talking to, actually. I'm supposed to moderate a debate between two people. Liam Cosgrove calls me a lot on debate moderation for Zero Hedge debates. He wanted me to moderate a Israel-Palestine debate.
Between who?
Max Abrams and what the fuck is the guy's name? And I said, I'm not the guy for that. I said, I'll tell you who you need. You need Brett Weinstein. And that's who he got. I said, you can tell Brett that I said you got to get Brett. And it might help. I don't know.
I'm almost wondering if Michael doesn't come on in a minute. We could just schedule another one with us three. That actually might be, maybe that'd be better, you think?
Do what?
Just schedule another time for Michael. That way we can just
He can just stop in and say hi. He can do a cameo.
Yeah.
So we've never really talked about the economy, but it feels to me like it's failing. But it always does. And they always seem to be able to paper over it. But I think people are suffering, and they can't afford groceries. The Michigan Consumer Confidence Index is at an all-time low, while claims of robust consumers are at an all-time high, which means someone's lying their ass off. And if we have a protracted downturn, that'll change the entire narrative, because then it really comes close to home. Then people are going to say, I don't care about Israel. I don't care about Iran. Get me a fucking job.
I think people are saying that already now.
I think that's correct.
There's no sentiment. There's no appetite for any of this. Nobody wanted this.
I know. Someone said that they thought that Israel saw that their support from the U.S. was coming to an end, and so they're just trying to get as much on the credit card as they can. I can't remember who it was. As I get older, the brain.
But then it also comes back to, is the financial system, is this the reset? And that's why they need to do that. And I don't understand that.
Well, that gets to the question of why did they appoint Kevin Warsh? People are tiptoeing around Kevin Warsh. If you had said, who is the last person in the world Trump would appoint, I would have said Kevin Warsh. He is the antichrist of loose monetary policy.
Here comes Michael right now.
There he is. And yet somehow Trump appointed him. And I go, that's not the guy who has a rep for printing.
Michael, we're already recording, man. We'll do it. You know, if you got to adjust your level, we'll make it work. And Dave and I have been chatting for 90 minutes already.
So, oh man,
you're doing a cameo.
I wish I would have known. I would love to come on with you and Dave. I've been sitting here reading old books. I had no idea you guys were on.
You were up already? Because it's only what?
Oh yeah, I usually get up at like 4. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of a last minute thing. We were supposed to record with Ed Dowd, and then Ed had to reschedule for next week. So I pinged you, I pinged Matt Smith, and Dave and I were like, let's just do a solo. And then you responded. So I'm like, oh, jump in. So we thought we'd just kick it over to you because we're talking about
take it where you want it. What's bugging you?
Oh Lord. This book just came in. I just got it from Australia. It's from 1881, and I was looking for old maps of the Kra Isthmus. You know, the Kra Isthmus there in Thailand, where the Chinese want to build that canal. They've wanted to build. The first time I went to look at that was in 2014 because we thought eventually they'll probably build a canal there. You know, Al Johnson and I went over there, and we went. That's in Thailand. Because that's a bypass for the Strait of Malacca. So we went over there in 2014, looked at it quite detailed.
You know the most famous person to die in the Strait of Malacca? The most famous person? Magellan. Magellan.
Oh, really? Did Magellan die in Malacca? I thought Magellan died closer to Philippines. I didn't.
I could be wrong, but that's what I remember in some battle in the shallows.
Oh, and that's wild.
So,
I mean,
Magellan, so the idea that he circumnavigated the world is a crock of shit. He made it halfway.
Really? I didn't know that.
He made it halfway. His ships came back, had some like 18 guys left. Some like 4 of them were not guys he started with, and they were all starving to death. They were just a wreck.
Like literally.
literally, yeah, literally.
Wait, how did he die?
He died, doing battle with natives.
That's what I thought. I thought he was killed by some Islamic guys, right? Is that I don't recall.
I can't remember. My brain's too much of a sieve to remember that level of detail.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't remember about his life and times, but anyway, this place, the Kra Isthmus, they've been thinking about building a canal there for maybe 4 centuries, and it's actually unknown, actually. And so, like Panama, I mean, they were thinking about a canal across Panama since 1500s or so. I mean, actually, when Balboa first, spotted the South Seas from down in Darien, up on that hill. Anyway. I say up on that hill because I'm down in Darien so much. It's just kind of background noise down over there. But anyway, this book, I was talking with an old London map or a London antique map company a few weeks ago about looking for maps of the Kra Isthmus, the oldest they found, and they found this book actually in Australia. And I bought it instantly. It's a book from 1881, and it's got these old, beautiful maps. Anyway, right now, you see China and Singapore and Thailand. They all got together this week, really putting hyperdrive on the Kra. This one actually has mapped out, this 1881 book. It has maps of 3 different potential crossings on the Kra Isthmus. Interesting, fascinating. I mean, the Kra Isthmus, this is going to be a fight because in Thailand, I've got significant experience in Thailand. Actually, I wrote the last 2 pages of one of the prime minister's book, that sort of thing. I mean, I've been all over that place because it's strategic. Thailand's very important. Most people know Thailand for vacations or whatever. I know it because it's the hyphen in Indo-Pacific security, right? I mean, it's very important. And so now you see Thailand and Singapore and China are all huddling this week, and others, But again, there's been this idea of building the canal for centuries, but now some of the people in Thailand rightfully are concerned about building the canal because they're concerned that those bottom three provinces that border Malaysia will then say, hey, we got water between us and we're splitting off, right? So the Thais who have concerns about this, I think they're dead on target. However, I also think there's this other concern, which they know. I mean, these are very smart people. So there's a battle between, should we make that canal, and potentially that could end up causing those three provinces to really have reason to truly split off at this point. Or, I mean, people need the canal at this point because you can be cut off at Malacca.
So would the canal be right at that really narrow pinch point, which then
that's called the Craw Isthmus, that pinch point between. Yeah, and Craw means turtle in Thai language, by the way. But in fact, I was just down there.
My son speaks Thai.
Yeah, well, he's been down there.
I don't know. A friend told him don't go down there.
Well, that's the southern three provinces they're talking about,
right
down in that area, right? And I've been down there, and I mean, there can be some straight up combat down there. There's that's a serious area, but that's the provinces they're concerned that would actually. Doug Casey and my wife and I and his wife, we were all down there about a year and a half ago at Craw Isthmus. So we were all down. We spent significant time down there.
Is that where you'd put the canal, though? Is that where the canal would be?
Yeah, that's where you'd do it, right there. And keep in mind, in World War II, that was a big battle zone right there. I mean, there's a huge amount of history there. I mean, that's a history-rich environment there. Like the British had a little. If you look down on the northern Malaysian part, the southern Thailand part, the British used to have a sort of a little state there. And actually the French, this book is in French actually, and the French, one of their canal proposals comes right out at that British sort of state there, a colony, right? I went down there and looked at that colony with Al Johnson again in about 2014, an old colony. It doesn't exist in there anymore. But the point is these routes, and every war you've ever heard of is about three things. One of three things, at least one of these things: routes, resources, and ideology. Right? Routes, resources, and ideology. Sometimes all three. And right now, I think that we're going to end up seeing a real battle over Malacca. And Paul Wolfowitz used to be the ambassador at Indonesia, by the way. I've been to dinner with him a few times. He would invite me to dinner and stuff. But he used to tell me stories about Indonesia, right? It was quite fascinating. And he would, anyway, the point is they've been set, when I say that with Paul Wolfowitz and being the ambassador to Indonesia, it's not a coincidence, right? This is all part of a larger picture that's unfolding over many generations. And to take control of these routes and resources like Panama, like Danish Strait. We were just up at the Danish Strait, that sort of thing. And Malacca, of course, Suez, Bab el-Mandeb, Hormuz, all the likely suspects. I think you're going to see Turkish Straits eventually shut down, and Gibraltar, actually. And not to mention Drake Passage. I mean, these things are... This is it. I mean, this is the big boy game that's been unfolding.
You think Gibraltar
will
be shut down? You think Gibraltar will be shut down?
At some point, probably. It'd be easy to do.
It would be easy, but I always think of that as, that wasn't that. Haven't we resolved our grievances in that region? Apparently not.
No, because if you're going to do global famines, you're going to want to choke down all these places. The ones you really want to choke down are going to be... Hormuz and Turkish Strait and Malacca, for sure, Malacca and Panama, because it's clear, by the way, that there's a I'm not sure how many people notice this, but that there's a clear move to put China in famine, right? And it can be done. If you're going to create famine in China, first of all, you do what's being done right now. You close Hormuz. You close also Malacca. If you close Malacca and you close Panama,
is that the fertilizer problem?
More than that. I mean, Malacca does like 7 times the volume of Panama. You know what I mean?
But Hormuz is the fertile. Is it
that partly. And also the Turkish Strait there, because that fertilizer that comes out of, I first, like 5 years ago, flew to Thailand to warn the former prime minister about potential fertilizer problems from the Strait of Hormuz and Turkish Straits being shut and whatnot. Anyway, not to go into that, but I've been warning about this in writing like hundreds of times over the years, right? I just warned in writing last year multiple times in 2025 that I would not be surprised to see the U.S. and Israel close the Strait of Hormuz and blame Iran. I was saying it in clear words, in writing, in words that clear. And people are like, that's crazy. Nobody would ever do that. And I'm like, maybe, but I know what I'm talking about. And look, they did it. They did it. And this is all we study 7 days a week for years on end. And
even to the
how they would do that.
Even to a neophyte like me, it seems patently obvious that the Strait of Hormuz would be closed by this. That anyone who pretends like, oh, I can't believe they shut the Strait of Hormuz couldn't possibly.
Yeah, but not by Iran. Not by Iran. That's what a lot of people said Iran would do it. And I'm like, no, it won't be. It's us that's trying to close it in a much greater game, because the people that are talking about Iran doing it and whatnot, they're looking at the strategic level. I'm talking grand strategy, which is a much higher level than strategic level, right? On the grand strategic level, if you're trying to wipe out, for instance, China, and I mean wipe them out, right? I mean put them in famine, that sort of thing. Not just them, but reduce the global population. That's grand strategy stuff, right?
Right.
To reduce the global population, you're going to want to knock out that energy. That's how we predicted Groningen getting shut down and Nord Stream in advance, many times, in writing, right? Going to Germany, going to Netherlands in advance, saying, I think they're going to close this down. I think they're going to close Nord Stream and all these things, right? And I think you're going to end up seeing China. They're trying to put China into famine, and and others. But if you're going to do that, you're going to. So this is with that in mind. On the grand strategic level, I think you're going to end up seeing a war between Argentina and Brazil, as one example. We've already gone down to Argentina to look at that. I don't know when it'll happen. It could be some years, could be some months, but you can clearly see that's what you would do, because you need to cut off China from Brazil, for one thing. So that means control of the Panama, because a lot of that food from Brazil goes to Panama. They're building the bioceanic corridor down there in it'll go through Brazil, through Paraguay, through Argentina, and through Chile, right? Masako and I went down and looked at the Argentina component about a year ago or so, a year and a half. But so we even got on a little train up there. But the point is you'll want to cut, if you want to put China in famine, you need to have control of the Panama Canal, and you need to interrupt their food coming from places like Brazil. You need to interrupt Malacca. You need to interrupt Hormuz. You need to interrupt Iran in actual energy production, because there's a lot of workarounds that they can do. So knocking out the actual production, which is what they're doing, and also there's other places. For instance, about I don't know, was it a year and a half ago? Chinese had a ship that came the northern route all the way, skipped all that stuff, and went right to Rotterdam. Right. This is why for years, Masako, my wife, and I just spent more than a month with Catherine Austin Fitz, because Netherlands is and she's in Netherlands. Netherlands is so important. The Chinese, again, recently had a ship skip all those choke points, come a whole different route, and go right to Rotterdam. Right, they're proof of concept. But I think that you'll end up seeing interruptions at places like Rotterdam, Antwerp, Hamburg. We just went over Hamburg looking a few months ago, and Danish Strait, Denmark is really important. Denmark's very important. And for many reasons. Anyway, when you look at the big board, it takes a long time to kind of put these things together, and you'll see. I think they're going to close. I think they're going to close.
Is this Greenland? Is this Greenland connect here?
Greenland is one component, but you look at if you look at, for instance, let's go to Denmark. Basically,
that's what made me ask about Greenland, right?
Yeah, I figured, because I know about this board. You know what I mean? But not just Greenland, but Maersk. China owns that shipping company called Costco, but Maersk owns a country called Denmark. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maersk is a serious company, and so Maersk, about how long ago was this? Maybe a year and a half ago. We were down in Panama. They just suddenly bought this railway. We talked about it before, Dave. When you and I think we talked about it when we were on with Michael last time, a long time ago. But that railway, Maersk just came out of the blue and bought that railway. We didn't even see it coming. And that railway between the Crystal Ball port that you see Rubio was just talking about, and the Balboa port, which is near that bridge that just had the fire. By the way, they just had some other trucks parked under that bridge, but I'm not sure if that was in the news. Anyway, so that railway that connects those two ports, that railway opened in 1855, I think. That was the first transcontinental railway, actually. It was, later when we built the 3 railways in the United States, that was a few years later. But that one, I think, opened in 1855. So that railway that goes across Panama, which is 50 miles, it goes from those 2 ports, right? One on the Caribbean side, and actually it's more like this, north-south. This is the Atlantic Caribbean side, this side, and this is the Pacific side. There's a railway between those 2 ports. Those are the 2 ports, for instance, that the BlackRock was trying to buy. Anyway, out of the blue, Maersk comes and buys that railway. That railway is really important. And that railway is important because ships can come to those 2 ports, Crystal Ball up on the north side and Balboa on the south, and they can just drop containers off, huge amounts, and pick containers up without going through the canal. So you just come on the Pacific side.
So was that railway, did it predate the canal, or was it built? Was that the railway that was used to build the canal?
It predated the canal by about 45, 55, by maybe 64 years, roughly.
Oh,
right?
That's way predated then.
Yeah, so roughly, actually, you won't believe all the maps I've got, but building that railway and the canal, but you're going to love this, Dave. I've got the price schedule in 1867 from the railway of bringing stuff through the canal. It was like 5 ounces of gold to bring a horse on that railway through the canal. It was an ounce of gold to bring a person that about 50 miles. But anyway, when the French started building the canal, which they failed at, the French were trying to build this canal as well. They had succeeded at Suez in 1869. Thank you, Masako. And Masako's bringing me a glass of water. She knows I need it. I really appreciate it. And but the Masako, we go down to Panama and all these places all over the place. But the French, they were going toe to toe with the British, right? All over the world, right? And so that's why the French were interested in building one of these canals. The British were trying to block them, which they succeeded. But the French had succeeded in Suez in 1869, which was very dangerous for the British, right? That's why Israel ended up being formed later to, get control of that Suez Canal. But then the French tried to do it in Panama. Many people tried, many people, like the Scottish went bankrupt in Panama in their Darien scheme, and that's why they got absorbed into the United Kingdom of Scotland, or England and Scotland. They failed in the 1690s, and they got absorbed in about 1707, right? Had the Scottish succeeded in Darien, it would probably be the United Kingdom of Scotland and England instead of England and Scotland. And so, but the point is, when the Panama Canal opened, they used that. Back to your question, I didn't forget what it is on the canal. Did they use the canal to build the railway to build the canal?
Because I remember the canal was a railroad problem. It was really
the canal. When you had the gold rush in California in the late 1840s, early 50s, they rushed to build that railway because otherwise you had to go through Drake Passage or schlep across Panama, which was very deadly. Or you had to, fight Apaches or whatever to go by wagon train. So either way, all these choices were kind of bad. That's why they could charge so much to go across on the railway. Right. I mean, we've got the whole price schedule for bringing bees across and everything else. But anyway, so that opened in about 1855. So the old railway, most of the original railway is actually under the water in the canal now. So later, once they opened the canal, they made another railway it's slightly to the side. Some of it's the same, but other parts are different. But yeah, that became the most profitable railway in the world for a while. It's extremely strategic. Maersk just swept in there and bought it. Then Maersk made a go. I don't know if this was public, but Maersk then made a go at buying those 2 ports, right? And that's why we were just up in Denmark. I mean, anyway, China's threatening Maersk and MSC, which is MSC is also a major player down in Panama, Mediterranean Shipping Company. And anyway, they're going toe to toe. I think you're going to end up seeing there's no way Denmark escapes this and without, getting involved in the battle. I wonder, just in the back of my mind, will somebody, I have no evidence for this, but just a suspicion, will somebody try to take some of those Maersk ships, right? Like, in the old days, big players would just take all the ships from some competitor. They would just take their ports, take their ships. And the thing is when you go to the Danish Strait, which is one of the top most important straits in the world, there's a huge UN office right there. I mean, right there on the Danish Strait. It's amazing. I mean, the things that you see. Yeah. Anyway, it's a wild time, and they're going to go every war you've ever read about, any war you've ever studied, it comes down to routes, resources, and ideology. At least one of those things. I have not
heard the narrative. I keep hearing there runs about China. That I hear all the time. But Mike and I were actually talking about the connection. To say it's about China doesn't explain anything, right? There's no content in that statement. But
no.
But the notion that it is about actually inducing a famine in China is I've never heard. I've never heard anyone talk about.
Nobody's ever talked about it because I'm the only one that, perpetually throws a dart from 5 years out and hits right in the bullseye. And
well,
I'm very
we did
cautious.
talk
I don't
about
throw
the
out
idea
a bunch of shotgun
we did talk about the idea of a global population reduction, but we were talking about that more in the context of things like the COVID vaccine and stuff like that.
Let me chime in because I want to get Michael's take on it. Because Michael and you and I talked about this, I think, last time briefly, but my conversation that I'd had with Matt Smith a couple of months ago, who is a mutual friend of Michael and I and Dave, but the parallels between COVID and now, what's going on, and one of the things that I didn't share with you, Dave, earlier, that the war itself. It's all centered around the Strait of Hormuz, if and when that opens. And to Michael's point, it seems like both sides intentionally have no motivation to open this thing because to create this energy shortage, you're legitimately creating it by doing this.
Now, keep in mind, Strait of Hormuz is a very strategic place, right? However, on the grand strategic level, that's another tactical battlefield. I mean, Strait of Malacca, all these things together. I mean, you can. It's not just about causing famine in not just China, but also globally, right? To reduce the population globally. They're openly doing this, right? I think in that regard, I would not be surprised if you see places like Mosul Dam get destroyed in Iraq. I would not be surprised at all. And I think that you're going to see a great rearrangement of the Gulf countries, and not just the Gulf countries, but all those synthetic countries on the Arabian Peninsula, and including ones that, for instance, Jordan, Syria, of course, Iraq has already been blistered up. The other GCC states, I call them the 1922 synthetics, like Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE. UAE's starting to fracture right now. Qatar.
Yeah, they've been asking for help. They've been begging for some help this week, right?
Does the war even need to? Does the war need to resume, Michael, at this point, or this?
The war's on, brother. This war has not.
But I mean, bombs
not over.
But so do you expect? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to keep cutting you off. But do you expect escalation, more bombs, or because it's all the Strait of Hormuz is really it's all that matters now, right?
No, look at Malacca. I mean, Hormuz is extremely important, absolutely vital. However, it's not the only absolutely vital place. Malacca is arguably even more important. And Panama is important for other reasons, as is, again, Danish Strait. All these Suez. You saw that Ever Given, shipwreck, whatever happened with the Ever Given in the Suez a few years ago. Remember that?
The one that went cockeyed and jammed up the Suez, right?
I think that was probably about two separate things. One was because the Zionists want to build a canal through Israel called the Ben Gurion Canal, right? So that's a bypass, right? That's a bypass that you don't have to use the straight up the Suez Canal, right? And so, and also that's in service to that larger route between India and UAE. That's why you see UAE splitting off. I mean, none of this is coincidence. This is and then going through Saudi anyway, Jordan, and eventually through Israel, through Haifa and Gaza, right? Gaza is important for numerous reasons. One is there's energy off of there, but more importantly, route, and resources. But that route, so these wars that have been going on since the edge of time are about routes, resources, and ideology. And you're seeing a total remake of the global architecture of trade is what's unfolding, which is constantly unfolding. It's nothing new that this is changing. It's just changing in a way that's very obvious to people now as they're being genocided, right? It's going to be obvious. I think we're going to see global famines. I've been saying this for 6 years now.
When is that going to be an above the fold story?
I would say by the end of 2027, because right now, as you know, we're still burning the food that's already been produced, and there's still fertilizer in the pipeline. There's still nitrogen in the soil, that sort of thing. But I think by the end of 2027, and there's different types of famines, and so I think it'll be obvious. I think that's a safe bet, actually.
So I once heard, I bet you've heard this a million times, that the starvation occurs in the spring because that's when your winter stores run out.
There's different types of famines, and so one type, I call them the quick. I've never seen anybody study actually faminology, right? Although the British are really good at it. I mean, seriously, because when you study war enough, you'll realize that pandemic, famine, and war, they do go together, right?
Absolutely.
And, yeah. I mean, it's right out of the Bible. But I've never seen anybody study. A lot of people have studied pandemic, but I've never seen somebody study what I would call pandemicology, right? I've never seen them, because there's another level to this. There's, what causes typhus or epidemic typhus, or the lice and all this stuff, right? So you'll see epidemic typhus in every famine, every big famine, you always see epidemic typhus. That's why I've been tracking typhus for years, right? So every day I get my Google Net alerts on typhus cases, right? That sort of thing. So, but anyway, but what I'm getting to is these things go together, and they go together in ways that are describable, but I've never seen anybody study the different components of how a famine can create a pandemic, how pandemic can create famine and war, but they do, and they interact very obviously, right? One example of how a pandemic can create famine is let's go to 1793. Let's go to the yellow fever outbreak in Philadelphia, right? Mm-hmm. And the yellow fever outbreak in Philadelphia, a lot of farmers are like, it didn't cause a huge famine or anything. But a lot of farmers immediately are like, we're out. They didn't know mosquitoes were the vector. That was 1793. Right. They didn't know that for another about 100 years, right? Until that Cuban guy figured out the mosquitoes, right? And if not for him, we probably wouldn't have been able to make the canal. That's one of the main obstacles the French had was those mosquitoes. They didn't know malaria, bad air, was transmitted by the mosquitoes, right? It used to be called malaria. Still called malaria, bad air in Latin. They used to call it miasma. They thought miasma caused all these things. Anyway, but the point is these things interact together in ways that I've been studying for years. But I wish there were other people like you, actually, with great scientific minds who would study these different components and work together and see how, these things can be interrupted, right? How you can interrupt. Here's an example of how how famine can create and spread. How famine can create and spread pandemic. One is all of these things: war, pandemic, and famine. They create a lot of human osmotic pressure, is what I call it, right? HOP, human osmotic pressure, the push and the pull of migration. So when you get into a famine, a big famine, or a big war, you'll always get epidemic typhus if it's a big war, right? Spread by lice, right? They call that ship fever. They call it camp fever. They call it hospital fever because, the lice were, and the epidemic typhus, when you have people that are in famine, they carry those diseases with them, right? So they start with HOP, human osmotic pressure, whatever diseases they've got, they pick some up along the way, and their immune systems are depressed. You got millions of people with depressed immune systems that are, eating new novel foods, all over the place, eating new monkeys they never interact with, that sort of thing. And the next thing you know, you've got new outbreaks of undescribed pandemic, and they spread because people are moving in part, right? And so these things, they all interact with each other. And what you're getting now is we're going to go into global famines. That's clear. That's exactly what they're trying to create. And again, how did I successfully predict not only that the Zionist side would close Strait of Hormuz and blame Iran, but the actual date of the attack on Iran?
Now, let me make sure I clarify. Let me get you to clarify. I would have said it that we coerced Iran into closing the strait. You're saying they closed the strait and blamed Iran. Distinguish those two.
Yeah, actually, they're blended, as you can see, right? Because Iran has no real reason to want to close the canal. That's like, hey, my hand is doing bad things, so I'm going to, cut this artery. That's like, it's like, so Iran doesn't want to close the Strait of Hormuz, right? But the people that want to make global famines want to close Strait of Hormuz. And keep in mind, when you have to integrate this into the larger picture of why was Nord Stream cut? Why was Groningen gas fields shut down? Why are all these fertilizer plants burning down for years, right? Why are the screwworms, which we successfully predicted about 4 years in advance? Masako and I were down in Darien when Brett Weinstein was down there. We were talking about screwworms.
I remember when you guys were all down there together. That was a big.
Wasn't Chris Martinson was down there too?
Chris was there too. Yeah.
He's got a big brain. And I brought up to him. I said, I thought. I think we're going to see screwworms make it back to the United States. And you can see my email train between me and the Department of Agriculture back like 4 or 5 years ago now, asking about the screwworm program down in Panama. How are we successfully predicting all these things? Because we understand what they're doing on the grand strategic level, right? And on the grand strategic level, they're working to create famine using lawfare as one, like when we go to Canada or Ireland or all these different places, and you talk with farmers, it's the same story everywhere you go. Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, United States, it's the same story. We can't run our farms because there's all these rules and regulations, but the big corporations are taking over. Same story, every single country, right? They might change
especially in Denmark.
Yeah.
Denmark
we were just up in Denmark talking with people.
Particularly oppressive treatment of farmers up in Denmark.
Exactly. And what do they do up there? They create a lot of pharma stuff. They got a huge UN office right on the Danish Strait. So this is all part of a larger architecture. You look at the UN headquarters down in Panama. It's at the best place in Panama. It's where our old Southern Southcom headquarters is, Fort Clayton. It's Ciudad del Saber, they call it now, City of Knowledge. But what I'm getting to is the United Nations took over that strategic land in Panama right next to one of the locks right there, actually, right next. It's old Fort Clayton. I mean, when you're in the UN headquarters in Panama City, City of Knowledge, they call it. Again, former Fort Clayton, you can see that bridge where the fire just happened. You can see the new Chinese bridge that's being constructed. You can see the ships coming through the Miraflores lock right there, that sort of thing, and the trains running past. There's a Holiday Inn right there in the City of Knowledge next to the headquarters, the UN headquarters, which I've stayed for months in that Holiday Inn. You can watch the whole pattern of life there. It's quite fascinating.
Tell me why Europe. Tell me in this picture, this narrative, why European leaders, with the exception of a couple of critical ones, threw their borders wide open against all logic. Why did they do that?
Never underestimate the power of brainwashing. and coercion, right?
So what
And
was the brainwashing and coercion? Clarify that.
Well, you can see the type of people they've installed in these places, right?
Right.
Actually, when you look at, and I know you can track very well with what I'm saying, when you look at how the United States, and I'm going to get to your question. It looks like I'm going in left field, but I'm going to go left field and come right back to home plate. When you look at how the United States and other places were formed, it's basically been a series of company towns or company colonies, like the Virginia Company of London, which my family was involved in, right? And were some of the first settlers there in 1610. They got shipwrecked in 1609 on the way on Bermuda. But anyway, they would raise shares and built company towns all over America, and they would own, the church and the clinic, hospital there, and the sheriff and the schools. These were real company towns. You will own nothing and work in our coal mine. You know what I mean? Because you live in a company house, right?
Hey,
with
company
money.
chits, right? Yeah,
that's right, and company debt, right? So these company towns were bought and sold between other companies. Like, I am tired of coal mining. I'm going to go into something else, or it's not profitable for us anymore, but it would be for you because you got other coal mines. So you buy and sell entire towns. This is old stuff. This is old stuff, right? I think Robert Friedland might still have a company town in down in Arizona, right? Copper mine. I need to message him and ask. I'm not like we're buddies or something, but I think he owns that copper town. Doug Casey, I'm not sure, but anyway, there's still company towns. But now the company town thing is kind of old. It's company countries now. Like Maersk basically owns Denmark. You know what I mean? I mean, it's company countries. And so, when the Irish ask me, like Ivor Cummins, why would they do it to Ireland? I'm like, well, they're doing it to Ireland. And think about it from a trillionaire perspective, right? From we're not talking about pesky billionaires. We're talking about trillionaire perspective. We're talking about Ireland would be a nice subdivision, right? That you could buy and sell in that class, right? It's reached that level. We're way beyond mere company towns. Company towns is like an apartment now, right? In the size of we're talking about
15-minute cities, yeah.
That's right. So you can buy and sell the people, right? You look at, they're doing people farming now. For instance, as women are having babies, their placentas are worth a lot of money, right? And so they're getting rid of the midwives, trying to push women into forcing them to have babies in hospitals. It's human farming, right? Literally human farming. And it's an old game. Many of the books I've got here from the 17 and 1800s are specifically about this, like the reduction of the population in Wales. Not Wales, W-H-A-L, but Wales, the country of Wales. And next to England there. Yeah, that one. And so, or the reduction of the Irish population.
With an H in it, right.
That's right. Not with the H. Skip the H. And so I've probably got 20 books on Irish population reduction, right?
They seem to be able to do a good job at it every once in a while. They really seem to.
Irish population never recovered after the 1840s, 1850s famine. Keep in mind, in the 1840s.
That famine was a climate-based famine at some level, right?
Well, they say, I've read 3 books on that famine, and then we went over there and studied it in Ireland as well. I think, they blame, the black potatoes. There's a book I actually read called The Black Potatoes. They blame it on this potential fungus from maybe guano or something. But, that fungus may or may not have been real. I have no idea. But it was also clearly a sort of Victorian famine by the English. Like, they cut off their ports, right? Oh, let me go back.
Okay.
Earlier,
okay.
I was mentioning
I
there's
didn't
different
know that.
Oh, yeah. The Americans were trying to send food. I think it was the Choctaw Indians or Chickasaw Indians were even trying to send food, right? And there's different types of famines. Let's talk about. I started to say that a while earlier, and then I got off on a topic. But there are these slow famines. That's the ones we're talking about now. The slow famines. They slowly build over a period of time, and those can be the worst, actually. And they just slowly fade in. Then there's the quick ones, like a lot of those happen in Japan. I'm in Japan now. Like if Fuji erupts, it could cause instant famines because of the ash and that sort of thing, right? So those are quick famines, like the 13 or 14 famine, global famine. I read a book on that. What was it called? Anyway, but the big eruption down there in Indonesia. But that's fascinating. I think it was The Year Without a Summer is one book that I read on that. And actually, this guy, his name is Kenjiro. This is a famous guy in Japan. I got several of his statues here. He's like my brother from a different mother. Look at him. He's reading a book, walking. But the Kenjiro in the 1800s, he sensed that there was a famine coming in Japan, not far from here, actually, where he was at. And his statue has been all in the Japanese schools, but he sensed that a famine was coming in the 1800s. And Kenjiro, like, for instance, the eggplants earlier in the year tasted like eggplants in the fall. And he's like, and the leaves were changing on the trees early and that sort of thing. Anyway, he started warning people to plant things like millet, not rice. Anyway, all the people who listened to him, nobody starved to death, right? So he matched his bookwormery and his knowledge of agriculture with, he was persuasive. And so now his statues are all over Japan in the schools. They're getting them removed now though. And because but what I'm getting to is Masako, my wife, she found evidence of about 503 famines in Japan in the last 1,500 years. But a lot of those famines are very quick. They're caused by, so that's like one every 3 years. That doesn't mean the whole
regional. The regional.
Yeah, because there's a lot of islands and there's there's little. It's not like all of Japan's in a famine at once. Right. Keep in mind they didn't always have bullet trains. You could have a famine in one place. Yeah. Even in Ireland, even in the Irish famine of the 1840s and 50s, they've had a lot of famines. But in that huge famine in the 1840s and 50s, there was parts of Ireland that were not in famine. There were parts in Ireland that were not affected. And there were parts, I've got a map of the counties, which ones were in like super cannibal famine and the others, nothing going on. Same in Ukraine with the Holodomor, right? There were parts of Ukraine, they didn't even know there was a famine in other parts of Ukraine, right? So this is normal. In China with the Henan province, terrible famine, other parts of China, no idea, right? So, but what I'm getting to is there's different types of famines. There's the quick ones. Those can be caused by like a volcano or locust
episodic. They're episodic.
That's a better way to put it. They're like, boom, something happens, a war, somebody closes your ports, like the hunger winter of 1944-45 in Netherlands, the hunger winter, right? And so, but they call it the hunger winter. And so that was caused partly by a cold winter and partly by the Germans closing the food supply. We were parachuting food in, the United States was, right? And so but then there's these slow famines, like some can be caused by just economic downturn. People just can't afford the food. And how this happens is important. I've never seen anybody study this except for me plowing through famine books for years. And what happens is in these economic famines, often what will happen is, say, Weimar Germany, hyperinflation, right? So now people can't afford the food. They start stealing it because they're hungry out of the stores that straight from the farms. So like hyper gleaning, you know what I mean? So the farmers stop farming. They start, because people are stealing it off the trains, off the everywhere, out of the warehouses. And so then people stop even producing the food. So that second season can be worse, right?
Oh, I didn't know about that latter. What I had heard, just to show you where I was at, what I'd heard is that the farmers stopped bringing the food to the city because the currency made it impossible to have rational trade. By the time they got the currency for their food, it didn't buy them anything. So it's completely.
You mean in Weimar?
The Weimar, yeah.
Weimar. Yeah, and that's an interesting famine, and you would have to negotiate prices for things fast in the morning. I've been in hyperinflation before, like let's say extremely high inflation, like in Poland. I was there watching it, and it was amazing to watch. Luckily, I earned money in dollars, so I was able to watch it as a spectator. But it was fascinating and terrible. Actually, they were not in famine or anything, so that was very good, and they were still making it. But you could see the hard. You can only imagine if you cranked up the amperage on that just a little bit, it would be like what happened in Weimar, right? So you end up with these. The thing is when the farmers stop farming, then that second season is worse, right?
Right.
So that's when you're rolling into the next year. That's the slow famine. So what you're describing is the one in the spring. You start starving in the spring.
Right.
That's the slow famine, and that slow famine that's tectonic. That's like you're going to have a proper famine at that point, not one that people are going to show up with ships and
society
maybe help you
breaks down. Society breaks down and things like that. Yeah.
When you see what a famine does to a country, it's worse than war. I mean, it's like really, it's like hitting the place with neutron bombs. I mean, it's really horrific. Mm-hmm. It radiates through generations, actually.
I've only seen photos of people walking down the street with carcasses in the street and things like that.
Do you see that?
We're building into a slow famine. We're building so I think based on just my study of famines and how things are shaping up, by the end of timing is always difficult, but by the end of 2027, I think we're going to see very obvious famines, like even normies should be able to see.
Couple of quick questions.
Probably earlier though.
The origin of what sounds like an overt attempt to elicit famine. Is it Club of Rome like thinking where they're saying we just need fewer people? Or what is
Well,
it?
You can see the World Economic Forum, useless eaters type stuff. I mean, a lot of it's just, Malthusian. I've got his original books here.
So that's the Club of Rome stuff. Yeah, okay.
It's Club of Rome, City of London. Is that City of London? No, is it? No, I'm asking. Is that
Come on, Mike.
No, I'm serious.
City of London.
Club of Rome. No, is the Club of Rome?
Now, keep in mind, let's be careful with that, because keep in mind, famine has been used as a weapon since biblical times, right? So, I mean, there's nothing new about there's nothing new except new names and new smartphones or whatever.
Right, salting the fields and things like that. Salting fields and things like that.
That's right, sowing the fields with tares, right? And that sort of thing. And sowing the wheat but so what I'm getting to is there's nothing new about it. And I've got, I don't know, it's got to be dozens of books from the 17 and 1800s on how to create famines. I mean, like how to reduce and manage your population, right? And so, I mean, because you got to keep in mind on the larger scale, the kings, the princes, the whatevers, the dictators, whoever they are, corporate now at this point, they manage people the way they manage cattle, right? They look at, wars are about routes, resources, and ideology. If you're on something very valuable, they study you. That's what all these books are, studying Indians right here, right? American Indians, all of them. I got this many books on that, on Indians, right? Studying the Indians, right? And what they're doing is, when they were building, for instance, the three railroads, the North, South, and Central, right? I've got the original departments, the Department of War Studies on that in the other library room, by the way. They're studying the Indians. These guys are on this route. They're studying whether we can buy their land, whether we can make them. The Indians don't like to work on railroads and that sort of thing. Or, so they do this all over the world. And it's happened for long before the United States was ever born, right? Is studying the local people. Can we make those people work for us? Can we tax those people like farm animals? Do we have to kill those people? Do we have to run them off? You got to keep in mind, they look at people the way that they look at mud when you're building the Panama Canal. Is this useful mud? Or is this, can we use the mud to help build the canal? Or is we got to get rid of this mud and dump it in the sea? And the people are treated the exact same way, like mosquitoes, right? Mosquitoes don't cause any problems, no problem. Mosquitoes cause problems, we're going to put oil in your water, right? That sort of thing. So this is the sort of management that goes on. They manage people and populations and will not hesitate to kill millions of people to build whatever they want to build. And this is nothing new. There's nothing new about it. It's a tale as old as time.
That's a brutal reality.
It is.
The other question, so why did we, and I remember when you went to the Darien Gap with Brett.
You should have come with us.
No, I'll let you guys do that one. And I remember the story about how there's multiple migrations. It's not just some big blurry migration, that there were, Chinese and Mexicans and then others. And we'll just leave it at that. Why did we throw the borders open?
Well, that's part of a larger plan. And keep in mind, this is a multiplayer game. So it's not like there's just one they. These are oligarchical systems They've evolved over time.
But somehow the Biden administration just opened the borders.
It was open before that. So the Biden administration comes and goes, right? Like the Trump administration just hands out visas, so it's more invisible, or they don't do mass deportations, right? So this, you got to keep in mind, this is part of this is a tale that's been going on, predates Obama, predates all these guys, predates the Bushes. This is stuff that's been going on for a long time, but at lower levels. That the energy levels were so low that most people didn't notice. Some people did. But again, this demographic warfare and anthropological warfare, which are slightly different but related, has been going on for biblical days. I mean, literally, the Romans were doing it. The Romans were good at it, right? So what
but
you're seeing
you can
now
pretend, you can pretend, for example, like a visa policy is our recruiting a population slice that we happen to need at that point. Whereas throwing the borders wide open seemed to be just mindless.
Well, they're destroying the United States. I mean,
okay,
that's straight up.
So
you gotta keep in mind.
So why would the U.S. authorities sign off on destroying the United States?
Because they're captured. They're captured.
Okay.
They're captured. I mean, a great book on this is The Rape of the Mind by Joost Meerloo, 1956. Rape of the Mind.
I think I read it.
Fantastic book, and it's a book worth studying, right? And I mean, not just reading, but studying. Read that one and Propaganda side by side. They're like siblings. But you know, capture
Propaganda as in Edward Bernays' Propaganda.
Yeah, if you read those two together,
it's
it's great to put them right beside each other and but read them slowly and quiet, like really study them. Honestly, you know, have a relationship with those books, you know, and you'll see it's quite easy.
I know.
Yeah.
Rape of the Mind. I'm trying to remember.
Joost Meerloo. He's a Dutch psychologist.
Well,
I think I did read it, but not the way you describe reading it. This is one of these whatever sticks.
Well, that's where Dave and I were talking about earlier, Michael, was the notion that Trump is fighting the elites and taking on some cabal.
Trump is their condom. Trump is just their condom. He's always been that guy. You know what I mean? I've never wavered in that. When Newt Gingrich called me up and whenever it was before the first election and he's trying to get support for Trump, I'm like, I'm not going to vote for a Clinton thing, but you got to have something better than that guy, right? I mean, that guy is not, no. You can see yourself and you can see your opposite in people, right? That guy is my opposite. That's why I'm so accurate on predicting Trump year after year after year. I can see his x-ray. I'm like a orthopedic surgeon. Here's Trump's x-ray on the x-ray board. How do I predict Trump? I just pick what I would do and just pick the opposite. And that's what he does, right? I mean, that guy is an absolute traitor. He's a hardcore traitor. He's not even American, right? He might be a U.S. citizen. That guy is part of the destruction mechanism. Look, death jabs. Seriously. I mean, what else more do you need to see besides death jabs? What else is there? You know, people be like, well, besides that. I'm like, what do you mean besides that? You know, besides nuking New York, you know what I mean? It's like,
well,
besides nuking New York and Los Angeles, what's he done that's really bad? Fauci fooled him to nuke the whole country.
That's what I said, Michael. We were talking about, well, you know, he got duped. I said, okay, at that time I thought that, but you can't say that anymore for him. You can't give him that pass any longer.
No. And I don't give a pass to those fools that keep defending him either, right? It's like, at some point, you got to keep moving, right? You know, like Scott Adams and that guy always pushing his dope and whatnot. Now the guy's dead. You know, that guy blocked me back when he was still alive. And, you know, in my culture, Scott Irish background, you should never talk bad about the dead. But from a war perspective, you need to talk about what happened. It's extremely important, right? Like, for instance, the Taliban, they like to put up a flag, and every year or so, one of our soldiers or British soldiers, young soldiers, despite being trained, never go for that flag. That's a trap. There'll be a bomb underneath it, right? And boom, another one's dead, right? So are you going to say, well, that guy, he really wanted that flag. He was a great guy. No, he was a dumbass. He was told not to go for the flag. Don't go for the flag, right? Boom, dead. Now we got to pick up his body parts, right? So, I mean, And so are we going to say, oh, he was such a great guy? No, he's a dumbass. Let's keep going, right?
The
so
phrase
that's
is
we
that
need to talk about these things, right? The point is we have to look at this as the war that we're in, right? And you saw that. I don't know if you've seen that video of the maybe EOD guy, Israeli IDF guy. He goes and picks up a flag, brings it back to his troops, his other guys, and it blew up right in the middle of them. There was a bomb in the flagpole, right? I mean, this is an old game. What I'm getting to is, at some point you got to say, enough is enough. If you die, I'm not going to cry for you. We got to keep going, right? And so what's happening right now is the people like Trump, these people that are installed, these people all over the country, whether it's in Netherlands or Denmark or all these different countries where they're installed, they have been installing traitors. These are not company towns. These are company countries, right? These are actually company countries. They're literally like Netherlands is a company country. They're building Tri-State City there now for 30 million people, which is Tri-State, which is most of Netherlands, part of Belgium or all of Belgium, and part of Germany, right? And so Tri-State City, it's a corporate city. You'll be able to buy and sell that city, right, later. Some other corporate person might go, or entity like bigger than BlackRock at some point, maybe. But what they're doing is that you see like China and their ecosystem is battling with the Zionist system, which is run mostly. Let me show you something. The main architecture in the 1400s was the Vatican. This is the Treaty of Tordesillas. This is the Treaty of Tordesillas. And I'm sure everybody's heard of the Treaty of Tordesillas. That's one of the most important treaties in the history of the last 500 years. This is it, right? This came out, and this book actually is not that old. This one's from like 1927 or something. I had a reprint done, or not, I didn't have it done, but I bought it. They had a reprint done, but this treaty is when Portugal and Spain were out doing their globalist thing, and the Vatican said, hey, I got to get control of my boys. I got to get control of Portugal and Spain, or they'll fight each other. That's why they speak Portuguese in Brazil today, was this treaty, right? The Pope Alexander VI drew a line on this globe. This globe is the oldest existing globe. I'm holding it up like Atlas because my globe, this one's only a couple hundred years old. But this globe came out in about 1493, right about when this came out, Treaty of Tordesillas, right? And they came out, this is the oldest known existing globe. It's called the Erdapfel globe, right? Erdapfel, which means earth apple in German, but actually it means potato as well. But anyway, this globe doesn't even have America on it. So when this was coming out, this was the high-tech globe. This was the globe. It's not flat, by the way. This globe was, this was the globe. America's not even on here, right? So
right.
This treaty, the Pope Alexander VI, he drew a line and he said, okay, this side is for Spain, this side is for Portugal, and Brazil was on the Portuguese side. That's why they speak Portuguese today, right? And then about 30 years later, they did another treaty called the Treaty of Saragossa. You see that? If you want to know about the ultimate treaty, and this was super globalist. The main architecture at that time was the Vatican. Is that in focus?
Yeah, we can see it.
So that's 1927. This is a reprint, obviously, but this is
I was going to say English was the first hint.
yeah, exactly. That's a tell right there. And so, so it's a reprint. But I got my hands on this thing, and it's an amazing book. But the point is the main architecture at that point was the Vatican. That was the superstructure, was the Vatican at that point, right? Now later, 30 years war and the Protestants come around, you have different superstructures start to form over time. You have a Zionist superstructure emerges, a Chinese superstructure. You have these other superstructures that form. For instance, Soviet Union was a construct, just like the United States. Soviet Union was a construct. China, as we know it today, was a construct, right? The Balkan states were a construct, right? These were constructs. And so these constructs were made so that, just like the Gulf countries, so that in service to routes and resources and making one-stop shopping to try to make global governance. How the United States was formed. We are a child of globalism. Our country is exactly a child of globalism, right? And it's been a very successful child. But one of the things that happens with these very successful childs is they end up being like this guy, Pinocchio, right? But Pinocchio, I keep this on my desk to remind me, Pinocchio ends up controlling other Pinocchios, but Pinocchio, inevitably, if Pinocchio grows, those strings pull both directions. And sometimes Pinocchio starts to who did Pinocchio actually first attack when Pinocchio was made? His maker. When he was first made, Pinocchio immediately kicks his maker, right? He goes and does that sort of thing. This is one of the most famous books in history, by the way, is Pinocchio. And I don't think that's a coincidence. It's up there with Harry Potter. I've got the original book here, by the way. But Pinocchio, these Pinocchios, as they get formed, keep in mind, when I was in Special Forces as a Green Beret, why do Green Berets even exist? They exist because after World War II, the OSS was created out of that CIA and Green Berets, right? And why do Green Berets even exist is to raise up Pinocchio countries. That's why they existed. To go into places, CIA would, the State Department or whoever would say, hey, for political reasons, we're going to do this in Vietnam or something, right? So the CIA goes in and makes first contact, or State Department first, then CIA, and then Green Berets come in and they start training up armies like Montagnards or whatever, right? On what happens eventually in the 7 phases of a U.S.-sponsored insurgency, or unconventional warfare, more accurately, the 7th phase is what's called demobilization, right? That's where the A team gets killed. That's when you try to take Pinocchio's guns, right? So you raise up Pinocchio out of the Montagnards or whatever, or some group, and now they got muscles, and they end up often being like Israel. Israel was a Pinocchio, right? And Pinocchio got big, right? This is normal. United States got big. Soviet Union. China now has gotten big. China was a construct. The China we know today did not exist very long ago. When you look at the way China was formed at the same sort of time period as Israel and the Gulf states and all this, notice they came up with a new language, modern Mandarin, just like they came up with modern Hebrew, right? When we talk about language warfare, this is part of the larger information construct, rape of the mind. We're not talking about controlling adjectives. We're talking about dissolving languages and making new languages like Hebrew, like Israeli Hebrew, right? And knocking out Yiddish. When I first picked up an old book on Yiddish, it wasn't on Yiddish, it was in Yiddish. And I was reading, and I'm like, this is a strange dialect because I speak German, right? And so I'm reading this thing, and I'm like, what is this? So I took it to a German professor, and he said, that's Yiddish. I said, oh, that's why I can't understand it all. I can understand a lot of it, actually. And, Yiddish, Israel has been trying to wipe out Yiddish for years, just like China's trying to wipe out Cantonese, right? But remember, China has modern Mandarin. They don't speak the old Mandarin of some of the old timers like in Taiwan, right? They speak modern Mandarin. And the modern Hebrew speakers, that's a different language made by the Pearl guy who changed his name. What did he change his name to? Yehuda or something, right? So I think he changed his name to Yehuda. The guy that actually created the modern Mandarin, he taught his children, not Mandarin, but Hebrew, taught his children to speak it, that sort of thing. But these rape of the mind sometimes happen in such a big way, literally a new language, wiping out the old languages, literally a new library with new books that you can't read in the old language because those books have been found and destroyed. United States, after World War II, United States, GHQ, General Headquarters, made a list of thousands of books here in Japan, which were to be hunted down and turned in, and they were, basically erasing much of Japanese history. Just erased it, gone, right? And this is normal. Book burnings are absolutely normal. But one way to burn books is just to make a new language, right? And erase the old language, like Cantonese. And I was speaking at a school in Hong Kong in 2020. I was invited to speak there, so I'm speaking. They're telling me about, hey, they're taking our students over to mainland China and getting them to, they don't want them to, they're basically saying in short, in American terms, hey, Cantonese is redneck language. Nobody should speak that primitive barbarian language. Everybody should speak Mandarin, which is actually modern Mandarin. And these languages are designed to guide you in a certain way. Some of the old missionaries here in Japan, they hated Japanese because Japanese resisted the spread of Christianity. I mean, the language itself at the granular level just resist, the missionaries. And it's interesting. I'll say one thing and I'll be quiet. Like the missionaries in the 1800s in China, they would, in the beginning, the Methodists and Baptists, they would be teaching English to their new converts. But when they taught English to Chinese, the Chinese would run off and leave them and go into business, so that the missionaries intentionally stopped teaching them English, right? So these are the sort of higher level language wars that are subtle and you would never see them. They're invisible, right? It's fascinating to look at this on the larger scale. But anyway, over a period of time, the people have been installed in these governments that they're not representative of anybody but the corporation, right? We're talking about the corporation, which is really an amalgam of it's who's who in the zoo, when, down in the jungle with Brett Weinstein, he's like, you keep saying they, who is the they, which is a very, simple question you would think. And I'm like, I don't know, who runs the jungle? Who runs this jungle, Brett? I don't know. It's a jungle. I love jungles, but I don't really know who runs it.
Someone in the U.S. set up a bunch of NGOs to process vast quantities of new quantities of immigrants starting at the beginning of the Biden administration. If you look at the sort of the flow rate, a lot of people don't know is there were tons of people coming over the border before Biden, but Biden cranked it up by about a factor of 4, I think, right?
A lot of that's straight up Zionist. A lot of that's straight up hardcore. Like,
really?
For instance, if you look at, for instance, Somaliland, right? And I've got some of the old maps from the 1800s on Somaliland here, like British Somalia and Italian and French and whatever. But anyway, in the 1800s, when they were looking for a place, now there's one group of people that want a homeland for the Jews, and there's another, the Zionists, who are, these guys, who want this was about routes and resources, and they would weaponize ideology. The Zionists were killing Jews from day one, man. In fact, here's one of Theodore Herzl's old books right here. I mean, I got a whole section on this guy. He's quite fascinating. But he was a puppet. This was Theodore Herzl for the British, right? Because the British needed to get control. This was Theodore Herzl, this guy, right? He was a Zionist. And in fact, Netanyahu, Meliakovsky, the current prime minister of Israel, if he's alive, I guess he is. His daddy's name was Meliakovsky. In fact, his dad wrote this book. I'll show you. This is Benjamin Netanyahu's dad, right? He wrote this book on the Spanish Inquisitions, right? Netanyahu, he changed his name in about roughly 1920 from Meliakovsky to Netanyahu. This is Ben Zion, not Benjamin.
Polish, you said? That was Polish?
No, he was born in Warsaw. He was born in Warsaw.
Yeah, right.
His dad was, but his grandfather, or his dad, this is the father of the current prime minister, Netanyahu, but his name was Meliakovsky. Same as that guy in Argentina, Meliakovsky. His name was Meliakovsky, right? And, both Meliakovskys were just together in Israel. And they're working very closely together. But his dad was a rabbi in Russia. His dad. This is the father of Benjamin Netanyahu, Meliakovsky. He changed his name, started signing his letters in the 1920s. When he was in Palestine, he started signing it Netanyahu. And this is the time period also when Pearl, the guy who was making modern Hebrew, also changed his name to, I think, Yehuda, right? And so they're all changing their names and that sort of thing. But his dad, the grandfather of the current prime minister of Israel, was from Russia. They were Meliakovskys, just like the guy down in Argentina, Meliakovskys. So that's a different superstructure, right? They were enabled by the British to begin with. They were puppets, right? The Zionists were hugely, but they had their own organic strength too. They weren't just total puppets from scratch. They weren't made from scratch. They had their own organic thing going. But some of the people who honestly wanted a homeland for Jews, they wanted to go to places like Madagascar or Argentina, that sort of thing. They wanted maybe Somaliland. They were doing reconnaissance down in Somaliland in the 1800s, And I've got some of them here, some of the reports, and they're like, hey, it's great, suitable climate for Europeans, and it can be made into, farmland and that sort of thing. So now, anyway, you see recently Israel actually recognized Somaliland. But let's get to the point. The point is, who are some of these people doing it? HIAS, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, is one of them. I've got some of their original books right here. Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. These are the big guys. Here they are. These are the big guys in their office. Visas to History. These guys, right? These guys, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. The Department of Homeland Security chief. What was his name? He used to be a board member on these guys. On HIAS. What was his name? The
Mayorkas.
Mayorkas. I was there when Mayorkas came to Darien. He was a board member at HIAS. And
I did not know this connection at all. I did not know this connection at all.
His parents were Sephardic Jews. He came. They were migrants from Cuba, right? And so, if you go to HIAS.org, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society.org, you'll see them a letter on there congratulating HIAS for taking the job at Department of Homeland Security. Now, when I got a tip that Mayorkas may go to Panama, I thought, wow, he might go to Darien. So I went down to Darien and I waited for 4 days. I was like, if he comes to Panama, I bet he'll fly down here in Blackhawks and he'll land right here. I waited for 4 days.
I think I remember hearing this story. Go ahead.
Yeah, and they did. They landed right in front of me. Even though I thought that they would do it, I was still surprised. I'm like, yeah, here comes the helicopters. Landed, I have video. And so there goes Mayorkas right in front of me, right past the HIAS office where he used to be. He wasn't boss down there, but he was a board member on the larger architecture. And he's in what we call China camp right there, which is bringing Iranians into America. These guys, HIAS, these guys, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, is bringing Iranians into America. I had Laura Loomer right at their office, at the front door, right in the camp, interviewing Iranians, right? She was there and, with Ann Vandersteel and others. Brett Weinstein was at their front door in Darien. I had him right at their front door, right? And so what I'm getting to, in fact, I almost leased their office. They got it before I got it, right? It's right beside one of the camps in Darien, HIAS. Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, go to their website, you'll see they're bragging about bringing Somalis to the United States. They're one of the things that's going on is they take people out of targeted areas and they put them into targeted areas. It's poetry in motion, right? They're depopulating you there and using you here, right? They don't like to waste energy, right? And so in Somalia, they wish to create Somaliland. If you look where Somalia is on the map, Somaliland, it's super strategic. It's right across the water from the Houthis, right? It's right there in the Bab el-Mandeb. It's right by Djibouti area, right? So what I'm getting to is, where are they putting some of these Somalis in the United States? That's right, Minneapolis, where you saw a lot of the riots recently, and you can look up HIAS and Somalis in Minneapolis. Look it up. You'll have all these articles where HIAS is helping them get in political power, fight charges for the
daycare facilities.
Yeah, but why Minneapolis? Why? If you look at Minneapolis,
right.
Minneapolis is the headwaters of the Mississippi. That's where the northern train goes. It's right on Lake Superior. You can go from Minnesota all the way to Hamburg on water. Never leave the water, right? You can go from where they're at all the way around the world and never leave the water. That's strategic land. So they're taking people from targeted strategic land and they're putting them in a strategically targeted land. That's what's going. Now that it can get lost in the noise of Mexicans coming through and others, but there are some, like the Chinese and the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, who are clearly destroying the United States, openly and clearly destroying the United States, openly, right? They don't even hide it. They mock the fools that just go along with it, right? And Trump is one of them, right? When I first
was he always one of them? Was he always one of them?
I think he was probably raised that way, but I only say that forensically. I didn't know that in advance. I started only noticing that really only a couple of years ago. And that it was like unequivocal at some point. I'm like, this is solid. I mean, that guy is
coincidence that his daughter ends up marrying a very powerful Zionist?
What do you think?
I don't know.
That's what you think.
The question kind of conveys my level of thinking. I don't know, but I find it interesting.
Keep in mind, marrying into
this has been done since the dawn of time. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, okay, let's go back to Malacca. When the Chinese were getting control of Malacca centuries ago, what did they do? They sent down a bunch of young women to marry into, because the Chinese way of fighting is different than ours. A Chinese way of fighting is to kind of like grow over you like kudzu, right? And so they'll send young women to marry in and to and they raise their children with the old ways. And this is an old form. In fact, when I was in Taiwan years ago, I was actually with a Chinese from mainland China army officer, right? It's funny. I came back and told Americans, they're like, "You're saying you saw a Chinese army officer in Taiwan?" I'm like, straight up. And they're like, in fact, I talked with him for hours, right? And they're like, no, you're hallucinating. Interestingly, Misako and I last year, we were in Taiwan. We were with a very interesting guy. In fact, he's an advisor to the president of their president. And I said, years ago, I was here, not far from here, where we're at now. And I said, I was talking with a Chinese military officer, and he was telling me about how they fight and that sort of thing. And when I told Americans, I said they didn't believe me. He goes, "I'm the one that runs the program." So you're the one. So you bring Chinese military officers here, and it's like, yeah, I run the program. Fascinating. Anyway,
so here's where you can see this phenomenon in a very big way. When China first started bringing students into PhD programs in the United States, first of all, we got great students, very carefully chosen students. What was noticeable after a decade was they were not going back to China. And it took me a long time to figure out that was not what they were attempting to achieve.
No, this goes back to the 1800s. And so, if you look at the movie Sand Pebbles, actually, I'm on a chat group with some Orthodox Jews. I'm the only non-Jew in there.
I remember
and we were
that
chatting
vividly
yesterday about this. And I was telling them to watch the movie Sand Pebbles. It's a fascinating movie.
You can't forget the guy getting carved up. You can't forget the guy getting carved up. Oh,
that's right, on the beach, right? I mean, and that's all. I just had, unfortunately, the book I just had come in is downstairs on the. I just had a book come in from that period in China, and from the 1800s. It's an old book. It just came in yesterday, but I was going through it yesterday, and it's from that time period. But they're talking about how Chinese are coming over to this 1800s, coming over to the United States and doing this sort of thing. So it's not like it's anything new. It's not like we recognized it. Our grandparents and their grandparents saw it, And so it was part of the great game. Actually, it's part of the game of bringing the students over and then putting them back into their governments, right? And we did the same with Japanese and others. So it wasn't like we were the victims. You know what I mean? We were creating the China we know now.
If you wish to have your way, having millions of Chinese nationals within the United States is certainly tremendously advantageous.
Absolutely. So you end up being, I mean, we took the land from the Indians, obviously, right? I say we. Who was we? We was an amalgam of peoples, right? I mean, French and Spaniards and everybody under the sun, right? Chinese, Japanese. I mean, mostly it was English and that sort of thing, right? And so, but in any case, so we're a synthesis of that. And but when we get down to how the Chinese fight, so I was talking with that officer in Taiwan, and he's like, Americans seem to think that, I'll tell you 3 different stories that are all related. One is that guy in the Chinese army officer in Taiwan. I know what I'm saying, right? That's like saying a Russian army officer outside the gate of Fort Bragg. I know what I'm saying, right? And that's what he was, right? But it was in Taiwan, and he's saying, you think that we're going to come and just attack Taiwan, but that's not where we will become Taiwan. We will be. That's the word he used. We will become Taiwan. Taiwan will become us. That's what happened in Malacca, right? And he's like, thousands of Taiwanese companies are already in China, right?
Right.
This is China, is what he was saying. Actually, it was never part of China, but not to go into that. But now I'm down. Masako and I were down in Honduras, and so we were on Roatan Island, and I was talking with somebody down there. I said, "Do you know anybody in the Honduran government or the military, the other part of the government, who has actually been invited to China?" And the guy that we're talking goes, "Oh, a good friend of mine. He's actually a retired Army general from the Honduran government, or Honduran Army, and he was the top general. He's like their chairman of the Joint Chiefs." He said he's part Chinese. He was invited to China. I said, "Oh, can we invite him to dinner?" He said, "Well, he lives near Tegucigalpa." I said, "Can we fly him in?" So we flew him in the next day. This is like 3 years ago or something, right? 3 or 4 years ago. So I said, "Can we fly him in?" And so we flew him in the next day. We had dinner with him on the island. And so we're talking. We're talking with this retired general in Honduras, part Chinese, so it's easy to figure out who he is. Part Chinese general of Honduras. You can see who I'm talking about, right? And he'd been invited over to China, as they always are. And he said the same thing that Chinese military officer told me in Taiwan. He goes, "Americans think that the Chinese will come and attack everywhere, but that's not how they go." He used the same words. He said they will become the place that they're taking. They will just slowly. And now, Masako, my wife, found a book from 1942 written by a Japanese army officer. And the Japanese army officer is talking about how different cultures fight and why they fight. He said, Americans fight for money, right? Americans, and I'm like, that's true. And he said, and that's not the only reason, but it's the one reason that they would see from Japan would be and the Russians, he said, they're just hardcore barbarians, right? He's like, basically the Russians are just barbarians.
They just fight.
Yeah, they never seem to look at us as actual barbarians, just kind of uncouth sometimes, but not really barbarians. We get along great with Japanese, except for the war thing, and which was anyway. But so in this Japanese army officer, he says, but the Chinese are different, and he described how they become their enemies, right? Like if you invade Chinese territory and you beat them back, their women will start to marry into the invaders. Right. So they're looking at this as a multi-generational, we'll take it back. Slowly but surely, we will grow on you like cousins. That's what they did in Malacca too. They sent a bunch of young Chinese women down there to marry in, right? So
have you come at this angle from a linguistic perspective, where, for example, someone like John McWhorter would, where he's written some brilliant books where he talks about where languages come from and how you can tell whether or not whether they brought wives with them and things like that, but the evolution of language, and you would be able to see this in
this sounds like something I need to read. What's his name?
John McWhorter is one of the most famous linguists in the world.
Mm-hmm.
McWhorter, McWhorter, and he's written a bunch of books. And one of the more entertaining ones is by the teaching company, I think it's called the teaching. You get them all at Amazon, and these, of course, you want to do audio because it's an audio thing, and
okay.
And he. So I've tried to read history nowhere near as much as you by any stretch of the imagination, from the perspective of classical history, military history, linguistic history, and DNA history. And they all provide a different view of what actually happened. And the DNA history is actually the one that tells you whether they arrived with their women or where they showed up as males and just marauded and things like that. Where is McWhorter's? Yeah, McWhorter's got so many books, teaching company. Let me just find this for you. I'm having trouble with my computer lately since I got a little hacked. The Story of Human Language.
The Story of Human Language.
Yeah, by John McWhorter is certainly just a primer. But he talks about all these different things you can learn from linguistics, including proto language, and he tries to trace back and figure out what the early languages might have looked like. But there might be a look at China's relationship with its conquered and foes from a linguistic perspective.
I'm going to find that book today. That sounds important. Yeah, that could be a good clue. Thanks for the trailhead on that one.
And he's got a dozen books minimum. So that's just one.
I'm going to get right as soon as we hang up. I'm going to get right on that.
This has set the record for my longest podcast ever. By the way,
by
how long is it?
We're at Dave and I are at almost 3 hours.
Wow.
I've broken that record. That's not my high. That's not my record. I did 3:45 once.
I did one in person of 3.
Let me ask you a couple other things. I got that. Club of Rome got that. Are we going to see famine here, in your opinion, in the next 5 years? Okay.
I think it's a very high chance. In fact, I started saying that in 2020, and people kept saying, "Don't you understand? We're the biggest food producer in the world." I'm like, brother, I get it. Before I talk into that, I will have gone through a lot of these. Right? It's like,
so you think they'll find a way to get to us? Is the gist?
I think it's not difficult. Actually, I can see multiple ways to easily get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give me one just to
turn out the lights?
Turn out like an EMP or something, yeah.
Yeah, or the fuel issues, or there's a lot of ways. Right now, they're setting conditions. In warfare, a huge amount of successful warfare for the high level, the people doing it on the PhD or super PhD level, is it can take decades to set the conditions, right? So they'll be setting the conditions. Yeah. One of the conditions that you're going to set is in the information sphere, right? Prepping the information battlefield is important, and they've been doing that. And another is to, if you're going to cause famine, I would do exactly what they're doing. I would use lawfare. I would do all these little things, screw worms.
A lot of friction.
This and that, just cutting, and just slowly getting rid of people's liberty gardens, like going after the Amish, little things here and there. Misako and I, we actually went down to Belize to talk with Mennonites. And we went down there about maybe 4 years ago or something, 3 years ago. And so we were talking with these Mennonites, and because, the Mennonites are pretty, if the electricity goes out, they'll be like, stars still shine. We ain't gonna notice.
We've had Mennonites put the roof on our garage, so
everybody
I know
loves
the Mennonites. Them. Yeah,
everybody down in Belize, they're like, oh, they're right on time, good price, their furniture is the best, stuff like that. We went to one of the furniture stores. I gave one of the Mennonites my camera. This is giant Mennonite, right? I speak German, so they could understand my German, but they speak a different dialect, so I could only get like 1/3 or 40% of theirs, maybe. And so, so it's like code for me, Mennonite code. But I gave him my camera, and he didn't quite know how that thing worked. We were in one of their furniture shops. But anyway, the Mennonites, they stick together, and they don't do much crime except for smuggling, and they're famous for smuggling around the world because they don't know borders. They don't care about borders. It's not smuggling to them, right? So but the Mennonites, but the Mennonites, and they live right there on the border between Mexico and Belize. By the way, they got these huge compounds.
I didn't know they went way down there. I didn't know they reached that far. I thought it was a northeastern United States phenomenon.
I asked them how they got there. They said originally, way back when, they were in Canada, and then they went to Mexico, and then from Mexico they ended up in Belize. And so this is how it has been evolving now. So they didn't want to take the jab, and the Mennonites were like, nope, we're not doing it. And the problem is the Mennonites produce a lot of the food for Belize, right? So they were in a position where we'll just leave. And so the Mennonites started sending out feelers to, I think, Peru and Suriname. And if you look online, Suriname Mennonites, you'll see there's an information war to stop the Mennonites. They're like, the Mennonites are cutting down. So when we were with the Mennonites in Belize, they were like, yeah, we're starting a camp in Suriname now. They're down there making it now. And the reason they're doing it is because the Belizean government poked the bear a little too hard on the jabs. And they're like, time to leave. So they're going down to, that's why it's very important to look at how different cultures will adapt to what's happening. Some cultures.
It is staggering to me that anyone would force the Mennonites to take a jab. It never, ever, ever made sense to me that they would go that deep into authoritarianism to actually make the Mennonites take the jab.
You've seen how the Amish avoided COVID, right? It's a meme that went around.
Yeah, they didn't have TV, right?
I love the Amish, man. I spent a lot of time with Amish. Those guys, if you can't get along with Amish or Mennonites, I'm not sure if you can get along with humans. But
so you mentioned the book that you went by it as heavily read, but I didn't know if you were trying to hint that it has importance, and I want to point out an importance to it, and that is Harry Potter. So Harry Potter is a book that has raised several generations of children, right? They've all read it. And if you look
I read all the books as study. And it's hard to get me to read fiction. I read all the Harry Potter books.
I don't read fiction often. I don't read fiction.
Not me either. I'm a nonfiction man.
So Harry Potter, the whole premise is that you go to this place and you get assigned an identity group by some magic hat. And heaven forbid you're a Slytherin, because that means you're going to be an evil bastard. And so you've got this entire generation that was raised on the idea of identity politics because of the Harry Potter books.
It's a caste system. Yeah.
It's a caste system. That's exactly right.
Up.
So that's why I think those younger generations signed up so quickly to identity politics.
Yeah, and professional victims, I've noticed this around the world, they're always predators. Always predators. The raised to be predaters. Oh gosh!
So they say that sociopaths, the two traits that are most common are charming. That's Bill Clinton, right? Not so much Hillary, and they want sympathy.
Yeah.
And that one didn't strike me until I realized
professional victims.
So some guy beats his wife, and then he says, "Oh, I'm such an evil person. You shouldn't stay married to me." Next thing you know, his wife's forgiving him, and he got away with it. So sympathy causes you to drop your rational guard, and you're using sympathy. You're using an emotional response instead of a rational response. Now,
and it happens on a cultural level. I mean, there's
right.
there are cultures that are professional victims.
Interesting. Yep. The last question I have is a real weird one, and I can't remember if this was triggered by something you said, but there's this, and I don't know what it is. It's a document online that's put out called Deagle.
The Deagle Report.
The Deagle Report. Who puts it out? Because for those who don't know what the Deagle Report is, it's this report that looks like kind of a standard military summary of stuff. But all of a sudden, and I can't remember what year it was, the Deagle Report suggested that the populations of the world and of the United States were going to cut to a third or a quarter. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember what year was predicted. It was like 2025 or something. What is the Deagle Report?
I don't know, but a lot of smart people have brought that up. I mean, people are like,
without explanation, it had the U.S. population dropping to something like 77 million. And it's without even saying why.
Yeah, it'd be easy to do.
You'd think there'd be a footnote saying we think there's something coming. But they didn't. Right. It just, there it is in the table.
Yeah. It could be a psyop, or it could be, because some of the beasts will tell you what they're going to do. One of the most interesting lines of study I ever did was studying cults. And
I've been down this rabbit hole so far. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, I infiltrated a cult and lived with one.
I've not done that.
It was epic. It was unbelievable, the things I learned. So this cult, I got on their trail in India, right? And I tracked them in India and Nepal and Germany and Italy and California and different places, Hawaii. But it's called Aghor, Aghor. And it's interesting because they believe that the God or the gods created everything, and therefore everything is perfect. Therefore, you should do everything. I mean, think it up, and the answer is yes, right? Sleep with a dead dog as a pillow for 3 weeks? Of course. I didn't just randomly say that. I mean, that's the sort of stuff they'll do, right?
Well, I've been chasing the satanic cults.
That's because them. They call them the left hand of God. They call them the left hand of God, right?
I think it's a fundamental part of the control mechanism, the control file that Catherine Austin Fitts refers to and stuff like that, where I think they're they're prevalent, but it's very hard to know how prevalent. It's a very dark, foggy area of society.
If you look at the Zionists, they are exactly like those Agoris that I tracked. Exactly. They just got jets. The Agoris didn't. But they call them the left hand of God. That's what the Agoris are called, right? I tracked them down. One was from Texas. I tracked him down, and I found him in India, right? And his name was Gary Rayburn Stevenson. His dad was an Army officer, very wealthy man. I talked with his dad. I got in contact with his dad. He's dead now. But Gary Rayburn Stevenson, he told me a lot about it, and I read every book I could read on it. For some reason, I thought, sooner or later, I'm going to have to fight these guys. You know, but I didn't know what it was. And actually, Gary, I used to call him GTC, Gary the Cannibal. He's like, Michael, stop calling me GTC. Do you call your vegetarian friends vegetarians? I'm like, vegetarians are weird, man. It's like,
Gary the
he
Cannibal.
said, well, I was a vegetarian. You know, he said a joke. He goes, I was a vegetarian. He goes, I started off like you, an omnivore. I'll just eat anything. Then I went to, and then he went back to omnivore. But really omnivore. But he started off. He became a vegan and a vegetarian and a fruitarian and a pescatarian, and finally he said, "Now I'm a humanitarian, Michael." Yeah, he knew every cannibal joke I've ever heard. He's like, I'm a humanitarian. Get it, Michael? I'm like, I get it, Gary. And so stop calling me Gary. My name is Kapal Nath. And I'm like, okay, Gary. I'm sorry, Kapal Nath, right? And so Kapal Nath means in Sanskrit the path of the skull, right? And so anyway, but when you look at these guys, they will do anything. In fact, I track, they're in my daily Google alerts for years, and there was something just came in. Some Agori just did something in India. And so but the thing is when you look at those guys and you study them, which I did to the nth degree, I studied those guys quite a lot. And I look at the Zionists, the Epstein Island class Zionists, that's them. That's them. It's the same thing. And
That's
ultimately they want ultimate release of all bonds, all binding and bonds, right? They want what the Hindus would call moksha. If there's any Hindus watching this, you could, fill out the blank. Actually, a lot of Indians think that they know something about Agoris, and they don't know anything, actually. They're like an American, because they're American, thinks they know something about snake handlers in Appalachia or something, It's like, no, just because you're an American doesn't mean you know. And nearly every Indian that I've talked with about Agoris, they have no idea what they're talking about. But I spent a lot of time with Agoris, and I'm telling you, those Zionists are like the same thing.
So I think the satanic cults really are a sort of recruiting program. And one of the oddities of the satanic cultists is, I don't know if it's part of some written lore or some rule or where they just seem to do it, but they seem to tip their hand and show that they're in the club. And so there's...
Oh, they tell you.
They tell you.
They need permission.
That's right. And so books you might like... The Ultimate Evil, Search for Sons of Sam. So I was in New York when Son of Sam was killing young women. And it turns out Son of Sam, there were many Sons of Sam killing women. And it was a confounding case. It turns out Gary Berkowitz, what's his first name?
I remember that. That was a serial killer, yeah.
Yeah, and it turns out that at first he looked completely psychotically crazy, just out of his mind. And then he reached out to a guy named Maury Terry and said, I want to talk to you. So Maury Terry goes into prison, interviews the guy, and he's nowhere near as crazy sounding now. And he starts telling him a story about how there are, how he says there's many more of me than you realize. And and this Maury Terry guy traces satanic cults into, by the way, Minnesota and Los Angeles and various places. He could tell Maury Terry about things that happen in these cities that he shouldn't have known about. And then the other odd one you'll find that's just entertaining as hell is called Weird Scenes in the Canyon.
Yeah, about the music.
It's about Laurel Canyon and the music scene.
I've got that book, but I haven't read it yet.
You got to read it. And I'll tell you why, because all those famous musicians, they all come from very high-level military sort of deep state families.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking just, my father was a sergeant. We're talking about, head of some division of the CIA type guy. And like Frank Zappa, for example, was a classic case. He ended up working for the World Bank or something after he left the Canyon. I mean, he was really and so Weird Scenes in the Canyon, it's a whole history of Laurel Canyon. What makes the story really entertaining to me is after I read this, and the guy puts together remarkable connections and remarkable stories. And it turns out my wife lived in Laurel Canyon for 2 years in the 70s. I'm going, holy Jesus, Candace. It didn't seem to register to her. But, the Canyon was a strange place. Charles Manson was certainly intimately tied to these guys. The book Chaos is a great book if you haven't read that.
I read the mathematical book Chaos, but
there's a book Chaos, which is about Charles Manson.
Oh.
And you quickly discover that his connection to higher authorities was very high, very serious. And
the mathematics book called Chaos was really cool.
I bet it is. I bet it is.
Fractals and things
they've talked about the importance of chaos theory in history, by the way. Trying to predict historical events, saying chaos theory says not going to happen, which I learned when Victor Davis Hanson started ripping my ass last summer, and I pulled that one out of my ass and said, this defends my case, Victor. So hold on, just
wait. Dave, why don't we end it?
Okay.
You want to end?
Okay, I'm being summoned.
Okay.
The long-haired General calls.
Yeah,
guys. Yeah. I don't think I need to tell you. People know where to find you guys. So I think for those, let me just say this really quick. For those that appreciate the work and enjoy hearing these conversations, they all go up early on my Substack. So for paid subscribers. So if you like what I'm doing, please consider becoming a paid subscriber. Thanks, guys.
I'm with you.
Until the next time.
Man, it's great coming on with you and Dave. I mean, we got to do this again.
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks, guys.
Pull out the maps.
Mic drop.
We'll start earlier in the day.
Mic drop.
It is early.